Chapter 41. Only idiots won't take an opportunity to make money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker Bowley Chiao. If you could design a new toy similar to the cat tree, it would be better if it was even taller and bigger. We plan on putting it in a theme park so that adults will also be challenged a bit. It's urgent, we need it the day after tomorrow. Can you make the design? Kneeling.jpg, Tang-Wan sent the other a picture with his 2 fingers outstretched. The other immediately understood. 2 million, I understand. They were a type of virtual business partners that had already reached an agreement. Tang-Wan sketched the design, and the other would manufacture it. Tang-Wan's live broadcast would be promoted, and sell big. Tang-Wan's viewer traffic had risen and his fee was still like this now. Tang-Wan would still design for them and didn't raise the price even after he became famous. Bowley Chiao thought that there were few business partners as conscientious, so he didn't bargain at all and just gave him what he wanted. Bnov.com Tang-Wan called Ji Yan over to help clean up, but he didn't go back to his room. He immediately sat down and began to sketch out his design. He drew a luxurious cat tree that resembled a castle, soaring like a heavenly pillar, absolutely meeting the other's requirements. The cat tree was something that Tang-Wan was so familiar with that he could draw it with his eyes closed, and he had almost completed it in half an hour. He noticed that Tang-Wan still hadn't come to find him after his live broadcast ended. He couldn't bear it anymore and went to catch the person himself. You still haven't finished. He stood by the doorway, his deep eyes hiding his bitterness. Give me 1 more hour. I'll finish this sketch and discuss the details with the other. Tang-Wan was single-mindedly focused, his pen flying across the paper. He asked discontentedly. You're not in a hurry now. What about their agreed upon nightly groomings? He had originally wanted to take the opportunity to cultivate the affection between them. How many meanings did being busy have? Tang-Wan turned around with a smile. Isn't it just 8 o'clock? It's still early. Rest assured, I will go to bed after I finish drawing. He was still dissatisfied, but the marshal couldn't let himself mention anything about grooming. Tang-Wan turned back around and drew more for a long while, then felt like he was being stared at. He turned his head again to look, and saw that he was still standing in the doorframe watching him like a complaining cat. Tang-Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'll go back and find you soon, aren't you tired of standing here? He simply asked someone to bring a chair over and sat beside Tang-Wan, watching him draw. Tang-Wan had almost finished his design. He smiled and glanced at He, then added a space capsule like cat bowl. I received an urgent order from Good Baby Children's Toy Company to make a giant cat tree in a theme park for cat beastmen to play with. When I finish designing this one, they'll give me 2 million. There's an old saying that goes like this. Only an idiot won't take an opportunity to make money. I should get the money tonight, so we don't have to worry. He was full of regret. If he hadn't told Tang-Wan that he didn't have any money, then Tang-Wan wouldn't pay so much attention to money and not even brush his fur. If we make this 100 meters tall, then it really would be a heavenly pillar. Can the beastmen rely on just their strength to climb up? He disdainfully tisked. It depends on the type of beastmen. The ones with hooves definitely can't. Tang-Wan frowned. Sometimes, the marshal's words were truly unpleasant. Only because he was so good-looking that his attractiveness index could replace his poisonous tongue. Then, can you climb up? He remained silent. This question even needed to be asked. Tang-Wan poked at him, can you do it? Of course. He looked scornfully at the cat tree. I could climb when I was a child. Cats that couldn't climb were all rubbish. Tang-Wan pursed his lips. Could it be said that he was domineering, or that his mouth was deficient? After I finish this, I really want to take De Zhuang to the playground to play. De Zhuang's so busy that he hasn't come in a long time. Has he grown a lot? Tang Wan looked around to make sure that they were the only two in the room, then whispered. Is De Zhuang His Majesty's illegitimate son? Zhong He. Surprised. Why are you looking at me like that? Was I right? Tang Wan was bitterly disappointed. The Imperial Empress is so pitiful. Such an extraordinary woman, but it wasn't enough to give His Majesty 2 children, she also has to wear a green hat, TSK, Tisk. Tang Wan signed his name in the lower right corner of the sketch. His gossipy heart was burning. Your cousin really is scum. Zhong He. However, I just don't understand why you're never here when De Zhuang is. Zhong He took a deep breath. He pinched Tang Wan's chin and turned him around. If you have time to talk about such matters, it would be better for you to finish your drawing and head back to the room to sleep. Tang Wan looked at his watch. It wasn't 9 o'clock yet. Aren't cats nocturnal animals? You want to sleep so early. Are you tired? Then you can sleep first. Zhong He's lips were stretched thin. He bowed his head and gave Tang Wan a strong kiss. He was sullen. He didn't just want to sleep quietly in bed, he wanted to exercise on it too. If they couldn't sleep, then they would be intimate for a bit. What was there to say about common gossip? Tang Wan sighed. The big cat's temperament couldn't be guessed. Even if he guessed back and forth, he still wouldn't understand. The big cat wasn't as easy to coax as the little cats. Tang Wan sent the sketch to Bo Li Xiao and explained the minute manufacturing details and the necessary components. After they finished speaking, it was already past 9 o'clock. Tang Wan stood up and went over to pull Zhong He. Let's go. I'll take a bath first. Since you're tired, you can sleep first. The marshal sullenly allowed himself to be pulled to their room. After Tang Wan took a bath, there was already a big cat lying across the bed with his chin resting on his front paws, gazing at him with hidden bitterness. The guilt in Tang Wan's heart suddenly rose. For the agreed. Upon brushing, I'll give it to you immediately. I'll brush until your fur is slick and smooth. Zhong He's eyes narrowed as he enjoyed his partner's brushing and pets. His entire body relaxed. Tang Wan listened to the faint purr, unsure if he had heard incorrectly. He moved closer to Zhong He's neck to listen. He smiled in amusement. The big cat was so easy to satisfy. After Tang Wan brushed his upper body, he moved down his body. While he was brushing, he was thinking of De Zhuang. I really miss De Zhuang. What has that child been doing recently? Zhong He opened his eyes slightly. If you want a child, we can have our own. Tang Wan frowned. What would you do if they aren't like you and remain an ordinary human instead? Zhong He's direct observation. Then they would be the baldest descendant of the feline family. Then I don't want one. I don't want a bald child. Tang Wan's refusal was adamant. If the child didn't have fur, then they wouldn't have the beautiful pattern of Zhong He's fur. So he just wouldn't want a child. In the end, Zhong He was also amused. Tang Wan had nearly forgotten that he was also an ordinary human and just wanted a furry child. After Tang Wan straightened out Zhong He's fur, he wrapped his arms around the cat's neck and kissed his face. Sleep like this tonight then, don't transform back. Zhong He's expression very clearly sank again. Tang Wan beamed and gave him 2 more rubs. I feel that you're very handsome like this. Zhong He's whiskers twitched and he lay down, motionless, and allowing Tang Wan to flatter him. I agree. Tang Wan's face turned red and he sighed quietly. While Zhong He was in this form, he could still control himself. Once he transformed into his human form, he wouldn't be able to restrain himself. Just before he went to sleep, Tang Wan dazedly rubbed Zhong He's face several times, muttering. De Zhuang. Tang Wan had been looking after the child for a year, and they were always together. How could he simply say that he wasn't coming back? Tang Daddy really missed the child. Zong he looked at Tang Wan's state, then sighed deeply. Ah. The next morning, Zong he had gone off to the army. Tang Wan was sitting on the grass, grooming Shenju Gu. The communication device on his wrist rang, and Tang Wan answered. Luo Bingjun asked with a laugh. Hello. Xiao Tang, I'm on holiday. Tang Wan placed the communication device to the side and turned on the video function, letting the other see his darling sweetheart. That's great, it's not easy for a big star to take a vacation. Luo Bingjun's head ached when he saw Shenju Gu. That brother is handsome ah. Quickly turn this off, I'm traumatized. Shenju Gu ate grass, glanced at the man in the image, and ignored him. Luo Bingjun was helpless. How does it have such an attitude? Tang Wan profoundly said. Probably because you're not as good looking as it is. Luo Bingjun touched his hair. Actually, I feel that I am more healthy than it is. Tang Wan laughed. This big star was free enough. So, when you're on vacation, you'll come and gossip with me. I also wanted to see the ring on your hand, it said that it's especially beautiful. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Who said that? Everyone's talking about it, so hurry up and let me take a close up look. Tang Wan had no choice but to let the other look at the national treasure on his finger. After he finished admiring, he praised. It's really beautiful. Will the ring on your finger bring us good luck? What does that mean? Let's play video games together. I heard that you aren't very good at playing video games. Your level must be very low. I signed up for a small account with my grandfather's number, so we can team up to terrorize those rookies. I can take on 10 at once, and I'll take you to soar up. Tang Wan. To be honest, he wasn't the least bit happy to be invited by this. Anyways, it was boring to be idle. Tang Wan was swayed by Luo Bingjun into playing a Jedi battlefield game. Luo Bingjun had played this before. He was actually mediocre, but was better than Tang Wan. The two people teamed up, not playing in random matches so that they were fighting against similarly leveled teams. Their luck was good, and they didn't meet any extraordinary teams. Luo Bingjun carried Tang Wan, and they won 6 games. With the rapid rise in levels, the players inside were becoming more difficult to handle. With Luo Bingjun dragging around a liability like Tang Wan, he struggled to form a team with others. It was because, sometimes, teammates were also a pit. After 10 matches, Tang Wan and Luo Bingjun were beaten thoroughly. The big star couldn't bear it anymore, and flipped a table. Damn it, I can't play anymore. I'm going to apply for another account. Don't. Tang Wan looked at himself, who had been a rookie. Bronze and struggled to attain silver. Are you going to fight all the way from the bottom again? Even if you reach silver, you can't go above it. Then what are you saying I should do? You wait, I'll call someone. Tang Wan stealthily started the live broadcast, shouting into it. Playing video games. Please bring us to soar. Searching, searching. After a few seconds, the audience didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You suddenly opened the live broadcast to find someone to play games with you. I saw, how can he be so hard? Working. He had a live broadcast 2 or 3 days ago, and last night, he was online again. I subconsciously looked out the window and thought it was red rain. I'll carry you. Add me. I just snatched a good opening. Can you take me? I play a lot, and my skills are good. Looking at the rows of lines flying across the screen, Tang Wan thought of the audience member before, who had claimed that he was a professional player. He recalled that their name was Crazy Luo Bei, but he hadn't paid a lot of attention towards this ID. Just after he finished, he saw a red line in the barrage, Crazy Luo Bei. I'll carry you, add me on private messaging. I can carry 6. Tang Wan laughed. He had been waiting for him, the mule had been pulled out by the horse for a walk. Before, he had said that he was a professional, and now, it was time for him to show his real skills. Tang Wan said to Luo Bingjun, I found a skilled person, you wait a bit and I'll call them. Tang Wan privately poked crazy Luo Bei and added him as a friend. Tang Wan also found a few more players on the live broadcast that seemed like they were good at playing video games, and formed a team of 7 people. In high spirits, they valiantly went to fight for the ranking. Luo Bingjun snorted. Fuck, I don't know if I can meet the bastards that just beat me. Tang Wan also snorted. What are you afraid of? It's not important, the entire map is our enemy. After they spoke, they both laughed and Tang Wan ridiculed a bit. That was ridiculous. It's like the two who were just defeated wasn't us. Of the 2 voices, one was magnetic and the other was charming. The former would intoxicate those that were listening, and another was a voice that could make ears pregnant. The latter was pleasing to the ear, the voice crisp and clear. After teasing around, the voices laughed, ha 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 ha. At this time, a person on the team asked uncertainly, say, why do I feel that number 1's voice sounds very familiar? Number 3 Crazy Luo Bei, it really does. His voice was very firm, but didn't sound very old. He felt that it was a person with a bad temperament, but had a strong identity. The other team members also doubtfully asked, I also feel that number 3's voice is somewhat familiar. Number 1 and number 3 were suddenly as quiet as chicken. Tang Wan. Soulful wholesale, beautiful meow voice. Changing device, a coin for 3. Passerby, don't miss this opportunity. Teammates and audience. M.Do you think we are foolish? When Zong he brought up having children and Tang Wan didn't say no. Question. Now that the chapters are going to get longer, double the normal length, would you prefer they be split in half and updated normally, or as a single chapter, but updated later? It looks like our updates are going to be 1 chapter at slightly longer intervals, slightly longer than a week. So, with each update, I'll also be posting the next update date. The one for the next chapter is looking like around December 11th, thanks. Chapter 42. I'm drinking vinegar, the uncoaxable kind. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Callous with so many spectators, the number of Luo Bingjun's fans naturally wasn't small, and all the people watching the live broadcast were listening to his song. As soon as Luo Bingjun came up and started to speak, the audience wasn't stupid. There wasn't one person who discerned it, but many. In addition, Luo Bingjun was now collaborating with Tang Wan, and they were mutuals on Weibo. If they thought about it, they were about the same age, so they should play together. Another one was Crazy Luo Bei. He really didn't brag, but was a king in the game, so much so that he even made it as a super king among the professional players. Not only that, but he was also only 16 years old. He was most likely the youngest child among the professional players. He had many fans of the sisterly and motherly type, and because of his little wolf-like temperament, he was very aggressive. As a result, he also had many male fans. During the competition, a player could refrain from showing their face to remain a mystery. However, players of the same team needed to communicate. As it happened, Crazy Luo Bei was the team leader. Arranged soldiers seemed to be this child's innate ability. When he opened his mouth, the fans could all hear it. Number 4 was a girl. When she heard that Tang Wan wanted to give 2 side accounts, she laughed and asked. Little brother, I want my voice to turn into Luo Bingjun's, I want 1,000 voice. Changing devices. Tang Wan couldn't hold in his happiness, sorry, I'm out of stock. A big fool just bought 10,000 of them. The big fool Luo Bingjun rolled his eyes and gave Tang Wan the middle finger. Number 4 asked again, then do you have a voice. Changing device for the little brother prevailing over Buddha. I want 10,000. Tang Wan's ears twitched, who? Prevailing over Buddha, Luo Bingjun didn't hide anything from Tang Wan, rambling to his heart's content and directly telling him. Gaming ID, prevailing over Buddha. Almost everyone who plays games knows of this talented youth, who's an expert in commanding. There's 1,000-regiment battle every month, and when other regiments see his ID, their heads ache. Tang Wan. The live broadcasting studio went into a frenzy. Luo Bingjun himself. Ahahaha. That brother is so handsome, he must be very handsome while playing games as well. Tang, don't hold him back. Gods, quickly come and look, Luo Bingjun is in Tang Wan's live broadcasting room. You didn't prepare any Meng pets today, are you going to live stream while playing games? Even though the other certainly didn't admit it, there's a 90% chance he's little brother prevailing over Buddha. God. My little brother is playing games in the live broadcasting studio. My son. My son. My son. Tang Wan watched as the live broadcasting room became lively, then quietly and stealthily texted a question to Luo Bingjun. That little brother prevailing over Buddha is very powerful. Luo Bingjun. You don't know, but you're still planning to look for him. Tang Wan. He mentioned once that he was a professional player and that he'd carry me if we ever played games. So I'll just try it. Luo Bingjun. You're amazing. He's not old, just 16 years old and already a captain, his commanding skills are very good. I've seen several videos of his competitions. How would I describe his tactics? He's unpredictable, and no one can guess what's going on in his head. He's also especially fierce, he'll kill a person when he sees them, not leaving a single one behind. He's the kind of fierce person that would kill the enemy even at a heavy cost. Tang Wan was surprised. Only 16, so young. Wasn't he the same age as the Cheetah twins? Didn't this child need to go to school? But this name. When Tang Wan remembered it, he couldn't help but laugh. It was truly unparalleled. After entering the game, Tang Wan beamed and poked number 3, little brother Luo Bei, protect me, the youth coughed, and coldly replied. Follow me closely later. Tang Wan's eyes brightened, this child was very good at giving people a sense of security. This was a very confident young man. Tang Wan understood that not everyone in the live broadcast wanted to see them play games. Initially, he hadn't intended to play on the live broadcast, he just wanted to find a teammate. He hadn't expected that the current number of people continued to grow with both of the people's fans coming in. To show consideration for the whole audience, Tang Wan released cats, rabbits, and parrots. He guessed that the 3 species wouldn't fight if they were placed together. Xian Feng was rather cunning. When it saw that the cat had been called out and that the rabbit had a larger body, it knew that it wouldn't stand a chance. So, it simply remained on his shoulder, watching him play games and waving his wings in an arrogant manner, just lacking a shout. Laozi is standing on Daddy Tang's shoulder, who still dares to fight with me. Hong Lu looked at it as if it was looking at a fool. The other Meng pets slept when they were supposed to sleep, ate when they were supposed to eat, took walks when they were supposed to take walks, and licked their fur when they were supposed to lick their fur. There were a good number of little kittens nestled against Mulan, waiting for the big sister to lick their fur. The atmosphere was very harmonious. When the game started, Xian Feng approached and shouted. Little big brother, Jia Yu. Little big sister, Jia Yu. Little beauties, Jia Yu. Tang Wan cocked his head, and Xian Feng immediately plastered itself against his face. The two rubbed their faces against the other in mutual understanding. Xian Feng then shouted. The other side's grandchild, do you dare to fight against me? A round of laughter rippled through the live broadcasting studio. Excellent, Xian Feng is a little expert at pulling hatred. Tang Wan unhappily glared at it, don't be noisy, speak civilly. Shua Feng cleverly rubbed against Tang Wan's face, well behaved for the time being. This time, a barrage came up, all learning from Xian Feng's speech. Little older brother, Jia Yu. Do you dare to fight against me? If I stand here, do you dare to hit me? Little older sister, Amua. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They had learned bad things from Xian Feng. After entering the game, Tang Wan knew that he wasn't good at technology, so he followed little brother number 3 closely. In front of this little brother, the players of this rank were like a basin of vegetables. They could be eaten however they chose to eat them. A small friend with a gun was like a god of death after entering. He didn't hide, but would rush up to the people he saw and go wherever he heard the sound of gunfire. Tang Wan just found a place to hide, not bothering to pick anything up, just carrying a weapon and using a backpack as a defense against the other side. Although, he felt that he might not need it against the other side. Xian Feng had already gone mad with excitement, and was making trouble on Tang Wan's shoulder. You over there, you dare to attack me? I dare you to try to attack me. A barrage of comments followed. You dare to attack me? I dare you to try to attack me. Everyone was misbehaving. Tang Wan ran down the entire game. He didn't know how, but he got his victory presented to him on a platter, smoothly capturing the first game. During the second game, fighting against, prevailing over Buddha was like trying to kill a god. The whole course of events was straightforward, just forging ahead with no special strategy. When he saw a person, he would attack them, just one person fighting against one of the other side's teams. After 2 games, the little brother was silent for a while, then suddenly asked with a smile, older brother, are you excited? Tang Wan immediately flattered. Of course I'm excited. I feel like only this can be considered playing a game. The other assertively replied. Yes, playing games are for feeling happy. Losing wouldn't be happy, so get that happiness, victory must be obtained. Tang Wan understood, this child had just said. I can't afford to lose. I can't lose. During the third game, prevailing over Buddha, still charged forward, calling his teammates to run after him. Come on. I'll let you experience abusing rookies. Tang Wan still had a playful mindset, happily running after the little brother. He really was worthy of being a professional player. This child was firm and unwavering, he'd kill any person he saw. What hiding and roundabout tactics? They simply didn't exist. His entire being was like a world's overlord. There were more and more people in the live broadcasting studio. There were many audience members discussing. So he really was a professional player. No, an exceedingly fantastic professional player. When he told us, we thought he was just boasting. Tang Wan took the time to glance at the screen, and was especially proud. My fans are crouching tigers and hidden dragons. After saying that, he distinctly heard a strong, cold hum, especially prideful. Tang Wan smiled and put on his headphones so that the audience couldn't hear the inter-team communications. He sent Crazy Luo Bei a message. Is this okay? We all know you abuse rookies. The other side didn't type either, proudly declaring. It doesn't matter. If they don't approve, they can come fight me themselves. Whatever. Tang Wan gave him a thumbs up. This little brother, how domineering. After a while, he heard the other say. In a bit, you can add my communications number. When I have time, I can bring you out to play. Luo Bingjun opened up a small chat window, pulling only Tang Wan and Crazy Luo Bei in, and asked Tang Wan. Are you wearing headphones? Tang Wan typed. It's more convenient to communicate like this. With so many audience members, if we accidentally say something unintended, we could very well be scolded. You two are public figures, so it wouldn't hurt to be careful. Luo Bingjun profoundly said. Then I'll be at ease. Just as Tang Wan was about to say that it was his consideration, he heard Heavenly King Luo's pregnancy-inducing voice flatter. Thank you Daddy for taking me along, please take care of me again next time. Tang Wan's lips were drawn out, he just wanted to stomp on this person. Did he want face? Did he have integrity? It was said that the nobility was very reserved. Who said this? Trusting that was his mistake. Tang Wan felt that he couldn't call back, prevailing over Buddha. This child must have come from Earth. He only could have chosen this name if he knew of the legend of the Monkey Brothers. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, "Xiao Luo Bei, don't listen to his nonsense, he's just teasing you." Number 3 laughed, and said coldly and proudly, "Good, number 2, don't be afraid. Daddy will take care of you. That over there is your uncle." Luo Bingjun paused, then grit his teeth. "Very well, Daddy." Tang Wan. "You two are incredible, you two go on first." After playing 6 games in a row, Crazy Luo Bei was still playing by shooting every person he saw. Tang Wan and Luo Bingjun were running behind the other, the number of their points accumulating. Tang Wan was already surrounded by a few rabbits and cats, and there were a few that were strolling around. The room was filled with a furry army. There were a number of larger cats licking a few smaller cats gathered into their arms. There were little kittens sleeping stretched out on the larger cats. They were obviously not related by blood, but they got along well. Tang Wan took the opportunity to look at the barrage. There were few comments, but the number of people wasn't small at all. Tang Wan curiously asked, "Why aren't you guys speaking?" Barrage. "Shoo, don't say anything, we're petting cats." "Be quiet, I'm feeling the fur on the rabbit's stomach." "Speaking destroys the mood, we just want to pet the cats." "Be a bit quieter, Tang Tang." "Shush. I'm looking at cats." "I'm looking at rabbits, don't speak." Tang Wan chuckled, "You guys can continue watching them for however long I'm gone." The audience wasn't satisfied. "Who let you hide your face? What else can we look at? Many people say that you're good looking, a lot of people saw it already, but there aren't any photos or evidence." "Humph. I'm exploding, I'm really exploding, so much that I scared myself by exploding." Tang Wan turned his head, pretending to be blind. He continued to play video games with his teammates. The audience sent out a series of angry crying expressions, all shouting that they wanted to blacklist Tang Wan. Unfortunately, Tang Wan simply pretended not to see it. He didn't try to coax them either. After another 5 games, Tang Wan watched his points soar up and his rank rise. He quietly followed Luo Bingjun and asked, "We should be the rookiest kings." Luo Bingjun. "There isn't any sense of challenge fighting like this." Tang Wan. "Haha. When you get hit, isn't it time to call for daddy?" Luo Bingjun was speechless. He found that he and Tang Wan really were kindred spirits. After meeting once, they were already familiar. Tang Wan had unexpectedly also started to bully him, he also had a sufficiently poisonous tongue. They teamed up to play video games. The audience watched the game while petting Meng pets. This time, the live broadcast was playing, "You play with your things, I'll play with my things." Midway, 2 players had something to deal with and went offline. Tang Wan went to the live broadcasting studio to ask for 2 more players. At the end stage, little brother, prevailing over Buddha, is starting to arrange his tactics. He circumvents, cuts in, looks for people to cover him, striking one by one. Tang Wan increasingly felt like this child had innate talent in commanding. Even though video games and real combat were different, the different paths would lead to the same result. He just didn't know why this child didn't go to school and played games every day. Could it be that he didn't have the money to attend school? Tang Wan's mind was active, and he recorded a section to send to Zhong He for him to watch. If he was a good seedling, then they could send this child to military academy. If he didn't have money, he could pay for his tuition. They played until noon, when Tang Wan glanced at the time. It was already 11:30, and he commented, Brothers, should we rest and have a meal offline? Moderate gaming can stimulate the brain, but excessive gaming can harm the body. The time should be reasonably distributed, and we should enjoy a healthy lifestyle. We should follow the basic principles of playing games. The barrage ha-ha-ha'd, laughing at Tang Wan's advice and making up a jingle. Playing until this moment, everyone was tired and logged off one after the other. At this time, Tang Wan privately poked Crazy Luo Bei. Little brother, can we be added as communications friends? Crazy Luo Bei. Yes, if someone bullies you in the future, you can call for me. I'll substitute for you and take revenge. Tang Wan laughed. This child was especially enthusiastic. After the two were added as friends, Tang Wan also logged off from the game and said to Luo Bingjun. I need to eat, and then take a nap afterward. I'm not playing in the afternoon. Luo Bingjun. Give me the child's communications number, and I'll go find the little daddy to carry me in the game. Tang Wan. If Su Mi knew that you were like this, he'd strangle you to death. Luo Bingjun. Oh. Tang Wan was speechless. Thinking of his friend's proper face and Luo Bingjun's frivolous manner and his strong penchant for disobedience pained him. Not worrying about Luo Bingjun's idiocy, Tang Wan sent the game video to Zhong He. Dear, this child is only 16 years old, what do you think about his talent for commanding? Zhong He. Kiss. Tang Wan. Zhong He. Another kiss. Tang Wan. Bah. The Qin, he was speaking about what that type of Qin. He didn't need his dear to come back. Tang Wan wasn't willing to respond to him. He'd stick to the child prodigy. Zhong He's heart was also heavy. It was Tang Wan who had flirted first, but when he responded, the other was unhappy. Humans were truly difficult to raise. Tang Wan closed the communicator and asked the live broadcast's audience. Are you still watching? It's been an entire morning. The audience understood that he wanted to log off, and threw rewards one after the other. Watch, 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 please don't close it. Looking at the gifts, Tang Wan smiled and his eyes narrowed. Then you guys can watch, I'll make something for them to eat. Now, Tang Wan needed to support his family members. Once he saw money, he'd want it. Tang Wan first went to the kitchen to chop up the meat for the cats and cooked it. Then, he cut up some vegetables and put it onto a plate for the rabbits. These children couldn't eat too many vegetables, otherwise, it would very easily lead to indigestion. The vegetables could only act as snacks. Once the rabbits saw the vegetables, they all dashed over to fight for them, especially Luo Bei. It just didn't know how plump it was, not holding it to heart at all. It's but pushed the others aside and it grabbed onto a good number of stalks of vegetables, nibbling with a full heart. Tang Wan picked it up, then under Luo Bei's despondent gaze, pulled out radishes one by one from its arms and put it back onto the plate. With every pull, Luo Bei became even more sullen. Even it was a rabbit, its eyes were very human, and in the end, Tang Wan couldn't bear it. This child couldn't have become a mythical spirit, right? How could it be this smart? It had a very heartbroken expression. The audience followed, taking pictures. Give it, give it, give it. Isn't it just a radish? Daddy Tang, stop. Please give the radish to Luo Bei. I'll pay for the radish. Save the child's gaze is despairing. Luo Bei's heart is saying. It's all mine. It's all mine. Quickly stop. No, Luo Bei should be thinking this. My dad has gone crazy, he wants to starve me to death. Tang Wan laughed and explained patiently to everyone. Eating too much will give it indigestion. One stalk is enough, and it can't be gluttonous. It isn't healthy. There were still members of the audience that thought. In order to eat, I would choose to die. The other audience members gave him likes, and in one breath, the barrage turned red, hanging on for a long time, letting him become a legend. This was a real hero, not afraid of death, a pure man. When the cats saw that the rabbits' food had arrived but their own meals still hadn't, they didn't ignore it anymore. They were all sour little lemons. When they saw Tang Wan first feeding the rabbits, but not them, some of them immediately lay down and pretended to be run over, some huddled next to his legs, and still others wanted to climb up his legs, meowing. Even Mulan unhappily gazed at Tang Wan, like it was asking him, "I am still your baby." Tang Wan quickly hugged Mulan. The little male cats could be pushed back a little bit. He'd first coax the young lady, "Rice is in the pot, wait for 5 minutes." The cats didn't understand what 5 minutes meant. They just hugged Tang Wan's legs, meowing. Jin Xiaopang was even more incredible, plopping its butt down right on the rabbit's vegetable dish with no one being able to push it off. Being plump was an advantage. Luo Bei just wanted to beat it up, squeaking with rage. As soon as they heard one of their own being squeaked at, the other cats could no longer ignore it. It didn't matter what Jin Xiaopang did, they all went to defend it. Tang Wan quickly separated them and strictly scolded. No fighting. All of the fur children were like kindergarten students who had seen a strict teacher, becoming well-behaved in an instant. Daddy Tang's imposing manner managed to suppress everyone in the area. Under the envious and jealous eyes of the audience, Tang Wan hugged about 10 of them in his arms, giving each of them a kiss and coaxing. "The meat can be eaten immediately, don't make noise and don't fight with the rabbits. How could they possibly beat you? Bullying others isn't good." The audience wept while tossing Tang Wan money. "Buy meat for the children. Buy vegetables for the rabbits. Xian Feng is still hungry. Daddy Tang, look at Xian Feng above your head. Hong Lu grows so fast, it needs to eat more. Buy more bird food for Hong Lu." Tang Wan smiled and waved a kitten's paw, "Little cuties, thank you for giving Daddy Tang money for meat." Xian Feng and the others ate their fill before they came out. If they ate any more, they would burst. With this argument, the audience went mad and still tossed money. Tang Wan was quietly stunned. Normally, he had seen that this group of people weren't willing to part with their money. His asking for half a day wasn't as good as waving a cat's paw. Xian Feng and Hong Lu leisurely ate melon seeds. As long as Tang Wan was with the cats, they wouldn't fly down. Even now, Xian Feng lived under the shadow of De Zhuang's paw, unable to free itself. After the meat was cooked, Ji Yan chopped it up and let it cool. He carried it over and wordlessly distributed the food among the fur children. Rabbits were omnivorous. When they saw the meat, they shamelessly came up to eat it. The cats that had just been coaxed were angered again. Was it okay to steal food? Did they want a war between the two species? Seeing that a cat-rabbit war was about to break out, Tang Wan quickly put away the rabbits, who had already finished eating. The audience saw Ji Yan, a stranger, enter and their target shifted. They started to take liberties with Ji Yan. "Little big brother is so attractive and intelligent, do you have a partner? What's your name? Do you have a girlfriend? Who are you? What's your relationship with Tang Wan? Little big brother, do you want to chat?" Tang Wan boldly guarded his own retainer. "How could you all be so misbehaving? First of all, this person is following me for a lifetime, like my little wife. So don't you dare." Ji Yan's face instantly flushed red. He glanced at the door and opened his mouth, not saying a word. Tang Wan raised his eyebrow, indicating for him to not be afraid. However misbehaving they are, you would just have to be even more so. At this moment, a voice came from the door, unhappily asking, "Little wife?" Tang Wan's heart skipped a beat and he turned his head, panicked. Zong He was standing at the door staring at him with a gloomy face. This time it was Tang Wan's turn to quickly cry, "I'm just joking, ha ha ha." Zong He grit his teeth. Joking out a little wife. He couldn't stand it. I'll be waiting for you in the room. You can explain it well to me. After Zhong He finished speaking, he turned around, leaving only a straight dot as dot steal back for Tang Wan to see, and return to the room. If he didn't explain it, this situation would never be over. Tang Wan's face was a... It was obviously a joke. He was also able to drink this type of vinegar. Had the big cat also turned into a lemon? He waved to Ji Yen and indicated that he would pass on the task of feeding them to him. As the audience watched Tang Wan leave, they all happily tossed money. Caught after courting disaster online, just what is Tang Tang going to go through? Say, why do I feel like that voice is familiar? Just how is it familiar? I can't hear it. Actually, just what is the relationship between Tang Tang and Marshal Zhong He? Is there still any use asking? There's a lot of proof showing that Tang Tang is the Marshal's mysterious wife. I don't believe it. Don't believe. Tang Tang said that his partner was in a wheelchair, that he was very ill. How could the Marshal be in a wheelchair? When the Marshal returned to Beta Ursi Minories, he was walking by himself. There's photographic evidence. Everyone in the audience looked at the photograph, and couldn't refute it. With Zhong He's straight and rigid back, no matter how they looked, it didn't look like he was sitting in a wheelchair. It didn't match up. What was the relationship between Tang Tang and Marshal Zhong He? The audience was baffled. They collectively let the issue go. There was a member of the audience with a little content creator tag in front of their ID and a large pit in their brain that said, Tang Tang is probably the partner of one of Zhong He's subordinates. Tang Tang's partner is in the military, an injured officer. Zhong He just took them into his home to look after them. With that, everything was explained. A large portion of the audience clapped. That's right. There was also a group of smart people who just wanted to watch, not saying anything. As long as they were excited. At this time, Tang Wan had already returned to the bedroom and saw that Zhong He had just been changing into his home attire. He was still wearing a regular white shirt. Tang Wan closed the door and leaned against it, watching the others back. Only then did he say, I'll buy you some more comfortable home clothes. Wearing a military uniform every day, are you tired of it? After Zhong He finished changing, he sat down on a chair. He asked with a disgruntled expression. You'll buy me some clothes, so I should forgive you. Tang Wan tisked. Was he being contrary, or just being uncoaxable? Cats, they really couldn't be spoiled all the time, or else they would rise to the heavens. Tang Wan calmly walked over and plopped his butt down on Zhong He's legs, raising his arms and tightly circling them around the other's neck. He resentfully asked. Then what do you want to do? I can't even joke, do you want to rise to the heavens? This was a very long chapter to translate, also a quick reminder about the holiday fan art / fanfic giveaway. Check out our Discord for more details. Chapter CH 43.1 Mother.in-law came to visit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callus, the one who was seeking trouble, ended up being the one who was troubled. Zhong He had never thought that there would be this kind of work between a husband and wife. For a while, he didn't know what he should say. Tang Wan gently and softly rubbed the big cat's head and casually laughed. You don't need to be so angry in the future, drinking vinegar at the drop of a hat. Otherwise, other people ought to call you lemon essence. Zhong He watched him, speak right in front of him. Whatever he said was correct, and he didn't bother arguing back at all. Hugging Tang Wan's waist, he held him still in his embrace and resentfully said. I was thinking too much, you don't have to give it. Tang Wan flattened his lips, his face first flushing red. The Marshal's gaze was too clear, and his grievance was also very clear. In the past, he could decline because the other's body wasn't well, but now the other's body had become stronger and he was still refusing to perform his marital duties. Tang Wan also felt that he really wasn't a man. Zong He waited for Tang Wan to give him a word of permission. Tang Wan's lukewarm temperament was too bothersome. If he didn't encourage him a little, he would be forever unable to take the initiative to step out of his own little defensive circle. At this time, there was a grumbling sound. Tang Wan's stomach had taken this inopportune moment to call out. Tang Wan's face became even more flushed and laughed nervously a few times. I didn't eat a lot for breakfast. Zong He unhappily patted his waist a few times. Eat first, then we can talk after you've eaten your fill. He hadn't been able to get a definite answer again. Zong He stood and hauled Tang Wan up, walking past the door. Already this skinny, if he became any skinner he would be invisible. The corner of Tang Wan's lips slowly quirked up. Looking at Zong He's tall and reliable back, his heart was sweetened. This big cat really hated to see him receive the least bit of blame. When Tang Wan went to eat, the kittens had already completely eaten all of the meat. Mulan took the initiative to take care of the children. She brought the smaller cats out to sun on the balcony and helped lick their fur. The other cats were lazily licking their own paws. After Tang Wan was full, he returned to take a look and saw that the audience was still watching, spellbound. There wasn't a barrage, but the number of people hadn't decreased a bit. He really was convinced by this group of people. They really could watch for a full day. You guys aren't going to rest? The audience members replied one after another. No rest. We're strong. You can go back to confess, we don't need you here, just having Meng pets is enough. Tang Wan was speechless. Who was confessing? Did his position in the household need confessing for? 10 more minutes, then they really need to be withdrawn. Otherwise, I won't let Xian Feng sing for you all. The audience threw rewards again. Begging. You. Not. To. Close. The live broadcast mustn't close, the song still needs to be sung. Tang Wan couldn't help but laugh. You all beg a lot. Barrage. That's right, we're honorable. Tang Wan ridiculed them in his heart. You all have been misbehaving like a mantis shrimp, and still are honorable. Feng come. Sing the brothers, sisters, uncles, and aunties a refreshing song. Sing the song that the strange uncle did when he carried you, the one who danced when he sang. Do you recall the name? The audience roared with laughter. Luo Bingjun. Correct. Tang Wan profoundly nodded. Your Uncle Luo. The audience screenshotted it and tagged Luo Bingjun. Tang says you're a strange uncle, asking your psychological shadow. Xian Feng's face was blank. It didn't understand what Tang Wan's long string of requests meant. It could only understand simple commands. Tang Wan laughed. In the end, it was only as smart as a bird and he didn't need to worry that it would become enlightened. Don't know how to sing it. Then Uncle Luo's song just isn't that popular yet. Then you can sing your favorite song and twirl around. This time, Xian Feng understood and trembled in excitement, flying over. I know. When Xian Feng pretended to be unskilled, Tang Wan's communication device beeped twice. He opened it, and saw that Bo Li Qiao had already sent over the 2 million. He also sent him another reminder. Tang Wan politely responded. I've received it, thank you. Bo Li Qiao. Don't mind it, this is what it's supposed to be. There's actually something that we want to ask for your help on. We want your cat to act as our company's mascot. A year's worth of advertising fees would be around 10 million. Would you accept? Tang Wan raised his eyebrows, pleasantly surprised. If he didn't accept it, then he was a fool. However, before they spoke more about it, he couldn't speak so contentedly. Tang Wan asked. Which cat are you looking at? I'm considering it. Bo Li Qiao. The chubby child Jin Xiaopang. Our boss especially likes it. Tang Wan glanced at Jin Xiaopang, who was so chubby that it looked like a big dango. This child really was adorable, with universal appeal. He asked. I want to know what work it will be doing when advertising. Is it exhausting? Bo Li Qiao. It's just taking a few pictures. It's also okay if you're the one to take the picture. Our colleague in the advertising department says that your photographic techniques are very good. You can pass it on to me, and we have staff members that specialize in manufacturing billboards. You can rest assured, there won't be anyone willing to let it suffer any hardships. The amount of money earned will be extremely satisfying. Tang Wan. We have a contract then. Bo Li Qiao. Of course. If I defraud you, you can bring an army over to beat me. Tang Wan held his forehead. There really were too many smart people. Luo Bingjun also definitely knew his identity. In this amount of time, Xian Feng had already finished its song, its success making everyone laugh and applause, thanking Xian Feng for refreshing them. Tang Wan saw that the atmosphere was right, then spoke with everyone. We really have to end here this time, I need to take a nap. Audience. Don't want. You can just go sleep, we don't need you. Tang, do you want to try for the record of the longest live broadcast? After the challenge, you can apply for the record. Others sing and dance for 24 hours, for you, it would be enough to let the cats out for 24 hours. Wouldn't that be very good? Tang Wan answered profoundly. I feel that what you said is very reasonable. I don't have to do it for just 24 hours. I can summon all of the Meng pets, and can live broadcast one of them every day. It would be different every day of the week. This really answers Xian Feng's words. Who else dares to fight with me? The audience clapped one after another. Right. Just be this aggressive. Looking at them speaking, Tang Wan clearly stood up and waved his hands, then I'll go take my afternoon nap. This time, it was the audience's turn to be stupefied. He really isn't going offline. Just live broadcasting like this. Is he really challenging the record for the longest live broadcast? That's not right, he could also be teasing us. He's done it before. He's already said it. Anyways, it's okay to be idle, and it's fun to tease the fans, so he could be teasing us. We'll be ready for combat, don't relax. The audience was nervous for half a day. They noticed that Tang Wan hadn't returned, but it was his little assistant who tidied everything up, blankly, wordlessly staring at the camera. He closed the door. They could still quietly watch the cats that had left the room to sleep. Audience. The host really went to sleep. We're the first audience that has been left behind by their host. We'll quietly draw ourselves the credentials. Today really is worth commemorating. In the bedroom across the hall, Zhong He had transformed into a large cat, drowsily basking under the sun on the balcony. This characteristic of cats couldn't be changed. When they were at home, they just wanted to transform into their original forms and roll around under the sun, relaxing. Tang Wan walked over and lay down beside Zhong He. He first touched the soft, thick blanket, then enthusiastically hugged the big cat, rubbing his face against him. I need to add tatami to this spot, then add a cushion and a rug so you can lie comfortably under the sun every day. Zhong He lifted his paw and pulled Tang Wan closer into his embrace, then softly licked him twice on the chin. Tang Wan's ears turned red and he buried his face in Zhong He's neck and used all of his strength to rub against it, his eyes glinting in laughter. He pouted, so dirty, I still need to do a live broadcast in the afternoon. Zhong He used his paw to pat his head, unhappy like the evasive Tang Wan. Sundra people really were hard to raise. It clearly was him who had first thrown himself at him. As a big cat who spoiled his partner, the marshal would take it as his partner being embarrassed and wouldn't argue with him. Live broadcasting for so long, aren't you tired? Tang Wan whispered. I'm still okay. Anyways, we can make a lot of money. For Zhong He, looking at Tang Wan was like looking at a little shark. What are you doing, trying to earn so much money? Tang Wan cupped the big cat's face and pinched his cheeks, to support you all. If there isn't any money, then you won't have any meat to eat, you'll starve and then your fur won't be proper. And you could also get worms and turn into a bald cat. Zhong He imagined what he would look like bald and his expression darkened. Tang Wan grinned and told him. Good Baby Production Company wants Jin Xiaopeng to do advertisements. They're giving 10 million a year, enough for all of our family's meals. The live broadcast typically generates a little pocket money, and with selling toy designs, supporting you wouldn't be a problem. Zhong He's voice deepened. You can sell your cats and just support me. Not selling. Tang Wan fixed his guarded gaze on the big cat in front of him. You're all the same species, why are you so eager to fry the others? No matter how you say it, you're their adoptive father, how could you be willing to sell them off? Tang Wan's emotions were clear. Your heart is dead, you wicked stepmother. Zhong He rubbed against the other's chin, I'm teasing. Only then did Tang Wan give him a pleasant expression and explain to him. After all, they've been extinct for a long time. If they left me, it's very possible that they would be taken away and experimented on. I like money, but I don't want just any kind of money. Zhong He couldn't help but rub against Tang Wan's face a few more times. Tang Wan's steadfastness was what moved him the most. No matter how much he was enticed, Tang Wan would remain firm and stand by his decision, adorably stubborn. Tang Wan went and pulled over a pillow and placed it on top of the blanket. He lay back down beside Zhong He and remembered the crazy Luo Bei he had played video games with. How do you feel about the child I told you about at noon? Zhong He thought about the video. If he's only 16 years old, then he's a military genius. Tang Wan excitedly exclaimed. Then that's too good, quickly seek him out. Just when Tang Wan was excited, Lin Bo arrived at the doorway and rang the doorbell, saying through the room's broadcasting system. Marshal, there's a person from the palace here to deliver a message. When he heard palace, Zhong He's expression turned serious. What happened? Lin Bo helplessly said. The old madam and His Majesty got into an argument, wanting to see Furen. His Majesty had no choice but to send a person over to deliver a message. They want you two to take a trip over. Tang Wan blinked. Half a day passed before he reacted and pointed towards his own nose. Your mother wants to see me. Zhong He pulled Tang Wan closer to himself, raised his eyebrow and asked. Why does my partner have to see her? Tang Wan sensed Zhong He's defensive and nervous manner. He was aware that Zhong He and his mother's relationship was more than just terrible. Lin Bo tried to pacify him. If they don't meet, the old madam might go find His Majesty and make noise. At the time, the imperial household would have to step in, and the person that would be embarrassed is Furen. This time, His Majesty already said that if you go to see her, it would be giving him face. Zhong He was still in a bad mood, I have to do what he says. Tang Wan admired him, how resolute. Man of steel Zhong He, disobeying His Majesty's words. Lin Bo couldn't help but laugh, and he whispered. Give His Majesty a little face In the end, he's your older cousin, and he liked you a lot when you two were little. There was still an expression of anger on Zhong He's feline face. If she wants to go make noise, then she can go make noise. An aunt is still half a mother. I'm already protecting the empire for him, then gifted him a Tama. Tell him that he doesn't need to thank me. Tang Wan couldn't bear it, pushed into laughter by his sentence, also gifted a ma, ha 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 ha. Being stared at by Zhong He, Tang Wan quickly closed his mouth. He wouldn't laugh anymore. Zhong He's expression really was scary. Zhong He unhappily said. We'll talk more after he comes to find me. Tang Wan stealthily patted Zhong He's neck and smoothed down his fur. It doesn't need to be this troublesome. If she wants to meet me, we can meet. Don't make His Majesty unhappy. Achievements are greater than the Lord. Tang Wan was afraid that His Majesty, who gave his wife a green hat, would give Zhong He trouble. Zhong He's expression eased slightly. Don't go. If you go, you could be angered to tears. Tang Wan was also a little fearful. You've been angered to tears. Zhong He gave a cold snort. I angered her to tears. Tang Wan wordless looked at Lin Bo. Just what was the matter between the two? Lin Bo shook his head. It was difficult to explain in a few words. Because of Zhong He's refusal, this matter was dropped for the time being. Tang Wan didn't get his afternoon nap. He lay down for a while, then went to take a peek into the live broadcasting room. The group of people was unexpectedly still there. Tang Wan wanted to kneel over for them, touching so much that they got addicted. When Tang Wan returned, the audience knew that he wanted to exit the live broadcast and they all shouted. You don't need to come. Go back and rest. The live broadcast doesn't need you. Just having cats would be enough. We can challenge the live broadcasting record for another week. You can leave. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He would be the first host to be driven out by their own audience. However, these cats still needed to be accompanied and coaxed by people. Tang Wan teased them with a cat stick for a while, and they were all delighted. Then he had no choice but to say goodbye to the audience and left among the audience's urges of, you quickly leave then. Tang Wan also thought that being like this was also very good. He didn't need to monitor it in any way, he just needed to let them pet the cats. He could still have a hand on his popularity, such that he didn't need to rely on the audience's rewards to pass his days. The advertising fees would be enough to support them for a year. As he became more popular, the advertising fees would also rise. In the future, he could also contact other advertisers, such as the Young Feline Special Beautiful Fur Skincare Company, Feline Powdered Milk, Feline Meat Jerky, and Combing Fur Combs. He could use his cats for anything that cats could use. Tang Wan thought, he didn't just have to do advertisements for cats but could do them for hooved creatures as well. He had Shinju Gu, the short-legged pony, and the mini donkey. They all had hooves, and he could do advertisements for good-quality hoof trimming scissors. With this scheme, Tang Wan felt that his future was bright, and supporting his family wouldn't be a problem. Tang Wan waited until the evening to check on the live broadcasting room again. The number of people in the audience hadn't decreased, and he couldn't help but ask. You guys aren't going to eat? There came a string from the barrage. Eating while watching them? Tang Wan shook his head. After feeding the cats, he looked at the clock. It's almost 7 o'clock already, and the live broadcast has been running for 10 hours already. Everyone go rest a bit. The audience disagreed. No. We must achieve the magnificent feat of watching the live broadcast for a week. Tang Wan, don't be scared, we'll do it together. Tang Wan simply sat down, and sincerely and earnestly spoke to everyone. Say, there are people addicted to the internet, smoking, and alcohol. In the future, will there be a term addicted to cats? If you all become so addicted, will I get banned? The audience laughed and cried, what kind of damned addiction was this? So, Tang Wan sat still and upright, solemnly saying, we'll finish today's live broadcast here, there will be cats to see in the future. Don't let my account get banned. Tang Wan worried that something unexpected would happen when he slept at night, when there weren't people there. He returned them all to the system. Although the audience was still wailing in anguish, they weren't as impassioned as they had been before. They were also tired after watching for a whole day. After hearing Tang Wan, if he said to withdraw, then they would withdraw. It was also the first time that Tang Wan had done a live broadcast for an entire day. When he counted his rewards, he was shocked. This group of people had given rewards of more than 8 million. After he paid his taxes, he still had 4 million. With Heavenly Emperor Luo Bingjun present, adding on the video game's big shot, prevailing over Buddha, and Tang Wan's top-notch traffic flow, the three overlords unexpectedly pulled in so many people to give rewards. Tang Wan was quickly moved to tears, thanking the empire's people for his meals. To express his thanks, he pulled out all of the pictures of the Meng pets he had taken before, as well as Luo Bingjun's autographs, and went to Weibo to set up a lottery. Eating, sleeping, and scolding De Zhuang. Pulling a total of 60 people. 20 people will get Luo Bingjun's autograph, 20 people will get the Meng Pet's photo album, and 20 people will get 10,000 star coins each. Thank you all for today's support. Without all of you, I wouldn't be here today. I love you all. Heart at Luo Bingjun's studio. Luo Bingjun was dumbstruck. Su Mi sighed. See, he had really sold Luo Bingjun off. I'm choosing to split this chapter into two because it's almost 9k, aka 3 chapters worth, characters, and I've never suffered more, so y'all better enjoy this. In the future, anything longer than 6k will be split in half for sanity's sake. Also, the next half of the chapter requires a slight trigger warning, so I decided to split here. Chapter 43.2. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. Slight trigger warning. Mentions of child abuse. That night, Tang Wan went for a walk in the garden after dinner and saw Lin Bo from a distance. Tang Wan jogged a few steps towards him. Lin Bo, I have a question. The old man pulled out some seeds from his pocket and gave a knowing smile, asking, what is the question? When Tang Wan saw his attitude, he knew that the other knew what he wanted to ask. He pretended to humbly ask for advice. I want to ask about the marshal and his mother. Lin Bo's smile scrunched his eyes, and he teasingly asked. Aya, so concerned. Wouldn't it be better to ask the marshal? Tang Wan heard the old man's teasing tone and he reached over to steal a few seeds from his hand, laughingly asking. Lin Bo, you've given me the impulse. Lin Bo split half the seeds with Tang Wan. Really? Tang Wan solemnly told him. I'm teasing. When you get old, I'll steal your walking stick. Lin Bo paused between crack the seeds. Although this threat was certainly very childish, it was still fierce enough. Very well, I won't tease you anymore. Lin Bo returned to being proper, taking Tang Wan along for a stroll. The old madam wasn't like this before, an especially mild person. After becoming provoked, she changed. Lin Bo pointed at his own head, roughly, not good here. Tang Wan understood. Lin Bo was subtly saying that there was something wrong with Zhong He's mother's head. This old man was too courageous. Once when the Duke went out to battle, he ran into a black hole. The battleship was damaged and the people had died. The madam believed that the Duke didn't listen to her and went out, throwing away his life. At the time, the marshal was only 3 years old, so he doesn't quite remember the situation. The madam's personality changed a lot. As a princess, she was young and beautiful. There was nothing wrong with remarrying, but she hadn't. She placed all of her attention onto the marshal, wanting him to obey her every word. Every word he said, every step he took, every bite of food he took, and everything he drank was under her control. Tang Wan frowned. It should be a sickness then. Some mental disorder. Lin Bo sighed. We doubt that she has a mental disorder. The emperor before, the marshal's grandfather, found some people to speak to her, but she forcefully refused. Additionally, every time that she was stimulated, she would become even more critical. This turned into even more efforts to control the marshal. So they didn't dare to get any more doctors to look at her. Originally, everyone thought that it would fade with time, that she would step out from under the shadow of the Duke's death. That was until once, she almost beat the marshal to death and the old emperor finally realized that their method wasn't working. He took in the marshal for a few days, not expecting that the old madam would also go into a frenzy, looking for her child and endlessly regretting what she had done, so much that she didn't hesitate to hurt herself. The old emperor loved his daughter and so sent the marshal back. He never thought that that night, the old madam would hug him so closely that he almost suffocated to death. Tang Wan stopped walking, his heart feeling like it had been squeezed, aching. This was a problem with the heart that occurred after a huge provocation. She had gone mad. Since they already knew that there was a mental problem, why did they give Zhong He to her to raise? In fact, Tang Wan also really wanted to add. If she's sick, go see a doctor. Lin Bo continued, his expression darkening. At the time, they didn't think so much. They believed that she had just suffered a huge shock. She never mentally adjusted, and she refused to see doctors, who were strangers and would intensify her reactions. You must also know that the old emperor only had one daughter. He only had her when he was 50 years old, so he pampered her like she was the pearl in the palm of his hand. He hated to upset her. When Tang Wan heard this, he only wanted to curse. No wonder he had raised a cheating heir. The old emperor shouldn't be an idiot. He couldn't use the blurred vision of an old person to look at his daughter, even if he loved her dearly. Later, the crown prince, the current emperor, frequently visited the duke's home and spent the night. He really was there to protect the marshal. His Majesty is older than the marshal by 20 years, and they had taken on His Majesty as a sort of older son. He could give the responsibility for the army to His Majesty without much worry. Their relationship was truly very good. Tang Wan was still tangled up in the matter of the crown prince fathering De Zhuang, and he couldn't muster up any good feelings for this cheating man. Lin Bo continued on. When the marshal was 16 years old, he left home and joined military school. Only then was he able to pull himself from the old madam's control. Tang Wan's heart loosened slightly. That was still good. He didn't expect that Lin Bo would suddenly turn it back around, immediately saying. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior stimulated the old madam into another frenzy, and she sent a number of people to assassinate the marshal. Tang Wan's face twisted. How much pain would Zhong He's heart be in, having his birth mother want to kill him? Just thinking about it, Tang Wan's heart dripped blood. Why? Lin Bo sighed, because the old madam said that the marshal was her son and that if he didn't listen, then he would be better off dead at her side. Tang Wan laughed angrily. What kind of nonsense reason was that? After His Majesty was crowned, to prevent the old madam from trying to kill the marshal again, he placed her under house arrest in the duke's mansion. If nothing happened, then he would let her out, and I was at his side to protect him. Only then could the marshal grow up at peace. Lin Bo finished speaking but suddenly stopped, fixing his blazing eyes on Tang Wan. The marshal really cares about you. I have never seen him care about a person so much. If he lost you, he would become even crazier than his mother. After all, he's still his mother's son. There are some aspects where they are indeed similar. Tang Wan listened calmly, his expression still for a while. Then he pulled over Lin Bo's hand, giving him more seeds. The corners of his lips twitched. You can relax, he would never become like that. When Lin Bo understood what Tang Wan meant, his eyes brightened and he gripped Tang Wan's hand. Moved, he opened and closed his mouth, and finally managed to say. Good, good. Tang Wan laughed and patted the back of the old man's wrinkled hand, admiringly saying. Lin Bo, for having raised Zhong He so well, you are the entire empire's hero. The corner of Lin Bo's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Right, the marshal is my pride. Tang Wan quietly teased him. They say that the child will resemble whoever raises them, so when Zhong He blackens, he'll be like you. Lin Bo quickly shook his head, his face full of innocence. No, I'm not that kind of person. Tang Wan grinned. The old man didn't have any regards in his heart at all. What natural blackening, that was the scariest thing. Lin Bo still reminded Tang Wan, in the old madam's mind, she should have had a say in the marshal's partner. If she meets you, she would definitely give you trouble. To protect you, the marshal doesn't want you to meet her. You should listen to him and not meet her. The marshal had experienced everything. Tang Wan laughed and nodded. Okay, I'll listen, I won't meet her. He was afraid that if they met, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from verbally attacking her until she cried. Doing such a thing the first time he met her, it wouldn't be good. When Tang Wan finished his stroll with Lin Bo, he didn't return to the room to rest but went directly to Zhong He's study. He was lying on the windowsill. What he was thinking was a mystery. He was staring outside, lying motionless. Tang Wan directly opened the door and walked in. When Zhong He heard his footsteps, his ears twitched and he turned his face slightly, remaining silent. Tang Wan smiled and walked up to the other side, looking at the direction Zhong He was staring in. There were only a few small mountaintops. It was so dark that there was nothing to see. Is the scenery pretty? Not pretty. If it's not pretty, you can look at me. Tang Wan captured the other's hand and pulled him up to leave. Your business is done, so don't sit here and stare blankly. We'll go back and brush your fur. Actually, Tang Wan's heart was heavy. This time, he really was feeling distressed. He didn't pity Zhong He's bitter experience while he was young but felt genuine distress. If Zhong He was a little weaker, he would have died or gone mad. The one who would have lost the most was him. For being so accepting of his partner now, if he went crazy, who would he seek out for compensation? Zhong He sensed that Tang Wan's mood wasn't right. What did Lin Bo say to you? I went to ask him, and he just reminded me to listen to his words and not meet your mother. There's nothing else. Tang Wan pulled Zhong He out of the room and up the stairs, easily locking up the strategic military room behind them. Zhong He's footsteps stopped and he asked, confused. Where are you going? To the rooftop, of course. Tang Wan unhappily glanced at Zhong He. Don't think that Tang Wan didn't know what he was doing, going to the rooftop to look at the stars. The starlight tonight is so good. There's nothing important. Why do you always want to run back to the bedroom? It's still early. Zhong He sighed regretfully. Tang Wan remained silent. Your expression is too obvious. There was a small loft on the rooftop with an especially large window. Standing there, one could get a wide view with a clear sight of the stars. Tang Wan had taken a fancy to this spot early on and had asked someone to place some interesting bamboo chairs and a bamboo table by the window. During the day, he could still come to sip tea while reading. Being pulled all the way up, Zhong He's expression was unhappy. He didn't understand why, to see a beautiful scene, they had to run all the way here to watch the stars. Could it be that this was the so-called romance? Men of Steel didn't understand the romance of stargazing. Tang Wan's eyes glittered as he stared at Zhong He. Please. Transform. Into. A big. Cat. Zhong He still couldn't bear this kind of gaze, and he transformed into his original form. He stood up, having no place to lie down. Just make do for a bit, lie on the rug. This is a rug that people have stepped on. I can only rest on rugs that other people haven't stepped on. Right, I'll change it for you. Tang Wan immediately asked Ji Yen to put out a new rug, teasing Zhong He, Marshal. Darren, please lie down. This rug absolutely hasn't been tarnished by other people, it won't dirty your fur. Zhong He loftily lay down. Tang Wan fixed his posture a little so that he was facing the window, and he excitedly sat in Zhong He's embrace and lay against his stomach. He was very happy to look outside at the bright rivers of stars. It really was too beautiful. Zhong He used his paw to press on Tang Wan's waist, dissatisfied. Where was the brushing they had agreed upon? Tang Wan grabbed his big paw and kneaded the paw pad. It didn't feel as good as a kitten's paw. Tisk, I'll give you some healing cream for your paw. Zhong He angrily pulled back his paw. He was a soldier, his hand doused with innumerable people's blood. He didn't need that silly thing. Tang Wan was already unwilling to listen to the other's explanation, one hand grabbing Zhong He's paw again and the other holding a pair of small clippers. He cut away the loose fur from his palm. Lin Bo saw that the light upstairs was on, and he came up to take a look. noticing the two people nestled together. He stroked his beard, gratified. As he passed through, he pretended that no one else could hear him and said, "Youth, if there's good feelings, then they can quickly give birth to children. While this weary old body can still move, I can still help raise the baby." Tang Wan's finger twitched. This old man definitely did it on purpose. Zhong He narrowed his eyes. When he thought of a child fighting with him over his partner, he unhappily shook his head. "Don't want children, they're too troublesome." Tang Wan unexpectedly said, "They say that beast men care the most about their child species. Our child should probably look something like De Zhuang." Tang Wan patted Zhong He's neck and gave a deep sigh. "De Zhuang's colors really resemble yours. The child hasn't come in a few days, he should be studying well." Zhong He closed his eyes. If he eats more and exercises in the future, he can become the most handsome and the strongest child in the universe, like you." Tang Wan rambled on, then became a little sentimental. De Zhuang really hadn't come to see him. When he recovered, he really didn't need this father. Zhong He rested his head on Tang Wan's leg, his entire body curved into a C shape. He wordlessly comforted Tang Wan. After being rubbed by Tang Wan a few times, Zhong He sighed. He needed to find an opportunity to confess. His pride wasn't as important as his partner's mood. Zhong He really was distressed. After they ate breakfast early the next day, Zhong He spoke with Tang Wan. "I don't have any pressing matters today, so can I take you out?" At this moment, Lin Bo hastily ran over. "Marshal, Furan, the old madam has come." Zhong He's expression chilled. How could she have come? Lin Bo pointed towards the imperial palace, a helpless expression on his face. The imperial family's guards brought her over, and the defense system didn't raise any alarms. Tang Wan looked at Zhong He's expression, his eyebrows furrowing. "You really have grown up now. The marshal's mother hasn't been able to see her child for years, so she could only come herself. Would you still lock your doors and refuse to see her?" While he was speaking, a richly dressed woman had already arrived at the door. Even if he was already 50 years old, his 5 senses were still refined. Her princess's noble and haughty air oozed into the atmosphere. However, she had a melancholy look, so that her expression appeared somewhat pinched and made her look somewhat unkind. Her expression was also frigid and strict. At just a glance, she seemed unapproachable. Zhong He's demeanor was calm, coldly asking, "What did you come here for?" "I haven't died yet." Tang Wan tugged on Zhong He's sleeve so that he calmed a little. Being impulsive wouldn't settle their disputes. When Madame Zhong saw Tang Wan's movement, her gaze became icy. Tang Wan nodded slightly, neither backing down nor appearing arrogant. "Hello." Madame Zhong sized up Tang Wan disgustedly. "What type of thing are you? Leave, I don't want to see an outsider." Because of these words, Zhong He's originally heavy expression instantly turned cold as ice and frost. Laws in these novels are always so, degree. Chapter 44. The Vixen Tang Wan, who can anger people to death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. Noticing that Zhong He's gaze had grown colder and more dreadful, the madam's heart trembled, her scalp numb. She hadn't seen her son for several years and never thought that Zhong He would already be taller than her by almost 2 heads. His entire imposing demeanor was not as delicate as it had been in the past, and wasn't a child she could control and hold in the palm of her hand again. The maid by her side whispered her advice. "Madam, don't forget. Before we came." The maid hesitated, but Madame Zhong understood what she meant. She couldn't forget what the Empress told her before she came. Madame Zhong took a deep sigh and said with a chilly expression, "I'm not arguing with you. As for the matter of your illness, I have spent a great amount of time thinking about it. I just want to see you." Madame Zhong's expression gradually eased, and she grievously looked at Zhong He. "When you woke up, you didn't come to see me. I am your mother, and you are my child. Zhong He's eyes flashed with ridicule and he gave off an apathetic "n," not swayed at all. Tang Wan shook his head. Zhong He's "n" was truly enough to anger people. He helplessly went to pour a cup of tea for Madame Zhong. If she really repented and wanted to mend her relationship with Zhong He, not disturbing them in the future, Tang Wan felt that he could still accept it. After all, she was Zhong He's mother, and filial piety was the most important virtue. With the words, filial piety pressing down on his head, the one making things difficult was Zhong He. At worst, they would finish the matters between them and never see each other again, neither bothering the other. Tang Wan poured the tea in a cup in front of the table. Madame Zhong glanced at him, then closed her eyes in disgust. She didn't hide her haughty tone. What were you born into? What do you do in the family? Tang Wan raised his eyebrows. He really wasn't up to standards in her eyes. He wasn't living off the other, relying on the Zhong family. Why was he receiving such anger? Tang Wan placed the tea on the table then frankly and calmly said. I don't know, I have amnesia. I had to beg for food on a garbage planet before I got married to Zhong He. I personally steeped the tea you're drinking. I've never seen such fragrant tea. Madame Zhong frowned, so angered by Tang Wan's words that she almost jumped up. She already almost couldn't bear being in the same room as Tang Wan, an unknown stranger, let alone drink the tea he made. Looking again at Tang Wan's earnest demeanor, Madame Zhong doubted if he was deliberately trying to embarrass her. The corners of Tang Wan's lips twitched. This elderly lady really wasn't difficult to handle. Zhong He pulled Tang Wan beside him with one move, one hand around his waist and the other picked up the teacup. He casually tossed it into the garbage bin. The meaning was to not indulge her. If she doesn't give you face, then you don't have to give her anything to drink. Tang Wan understood. Though Zhong He said that he could anger his mother to tears, Madame Zhong's face was white. Zhong He's ability to anger people was also very good. Madame Zhong saw Zhong He's clear intentions to protect Tang Wan, curling around him and not giving any importance to his own mother. Her entire body shook in anger. Do you really need to act so aggressively against me? Zhong He tilted his chin and pulled Tang Wan closer. He provokingly said. What if I am, and what if I'm not? There isn't much meaning in communicating with you. Their mother-child relationship was already so weak that they had no need to speak to each other. Him raising her, her having given birth to him, and disregarding how she treated him in the past was already considered extremely benevolent. She had come to his household and criticized, picking apart his partner in every possible way. Zhong He felt that he had already given his cousin a lot of face by not having people drive her away. With red-rimmed eyes, Madame Zhong resolutely slammed her hands on the table. I don't agree with your marriage. There are people whose personality is compatible with yours, whose status is appropriate for you, and can help you in every aspect. But you don't marry them, instead you marry this person of unknown origins. Have you gone mad? Tang Wan tisked. Even people better than him would have their bottom lines. Being insulted like this, he was already unhappy. The princess really didn't know, acting coquettishly towards men for a good life and husbands getting along well. Immediately, Tang Wan grievously pressed himself against Zhong He's shoulder and looked at him adoringly, head tilted. Like a little kitten, he whispered, Dear, are you mad on my behalf? I just cropped up on a garbage planet, I don't have status, and I don't know how to properly speak and socialize. I don't even have a diploma. I'm illiterate. Zhong He's breath caught, his entire body stiff. He lowered his head and looked at the incomparably lovable partner, who let him do as he desired, lying in his embrace. He knew Tang Wan was doing it on purpose, but he couldn't stop the rush of hot blood towards his forehead. He solemnly said with a cold expression. I don't need other people to help me, I just need you. Really incomparably bold. Tang Wan cupped his hands around Zhong He's face, giving him an enthusiastic kiss. "Love you." Madame Zong was so angry that her entire body was trembling, her chest violently heaving. The scared maid beside her had a pale complexion, unceasingly kneading her shoulders. She hated that she couldn't kneel down for Zong He and Tang Wan. If they provoked her a few more times, Madame Zong might faint from anger. Zong He's gaze was as cold as before, completely lacking emotion. He wouldn't concede at all. Tang Wan blinked, provocation drawn across his whole face. "I don't have anything, so what if you dislike me? Your son likes me. What are you going to do? Bite me?" Madame Zong evened out her breaths with great difficulty. With a glance at Tang Wan's gaze, her forehead throbbed. She pointed at Tang Wan, who was lying in Zong He's embrace and not properly standing, and irritably asked Zong He, "What do you like about him? What's the difference between him and the criminal male vixens that seduce people?" Zong He praised with a blank face. "He's good-looking, and he likes cats." Tang Wan cutely nodded his head and shamelessly, quietly meowed. I'm good-looking, I can act coquettishly, I don't have an ounce of a noble's reserve. He just likes this type of thing." When he finished speaking, Tang Wan couldn't bear it anymore and buried his face in Zong He's neck. He couldn't help but laugh. Madame Zong, this princess, would never imagine that there would be such shameless people. He hoped she wouldn't faint in anger. Zong He tilted his head to look at Tang Wan. He had never seen him being so mischievous before. It was very pleasing to look at, and he couldn't look enough. Seeing Zong He stare, Tang Wan winked and couldn't help but smile, eyes curved. Madame Zong almost fainted in anger, giving her maid a scare. She quickly kneaded her head, incredibly busy. Tang Wan still hadn't finished. He exaggeratingly turned around, saying towards Madame Zong in a tsundere manner, "I love him, don't think of breaking us up. You don't even know what I do. I sell face on the internet. I have 1 billion fans. If you break us up, I'll go cry online about this malicious mother.in.law. I'm good looking when I cry, and they'll clamor to scold you. Then wouldn't that be very bad?" Madame Zong clasped a hand over her heart, so furious that her chest panged. She fumed between gritted teeth. "If you like this type, you can always raise a few. How could this kind of person be Zong He's person? He even sells his face." Zong He's unwavering gaze was fixed on Tang Wan. "Raise for what? I don't need to sell, and I eat enough. It's enough just to have him, nav omq." Madame Zong ferociously slapped the table a few times, unable to speak even a word. The maid nervously urged, "Young master, please speak a little less. Don't really make the madam suffer an accident." Tang Wan nearly laughed out loud and he pinched Zong He's waist, letting him know that it was almost enough. The old emperor's little princess was almost the same age as the current emperor, and was higher in seniority than the current emperor. Now, she was an unparalleled woman. They should be the first ones to make her so angry. However, if Madame Zong really was angered into needing rescue in the marshal's residence, it would be a smear on Zong He's reputation. Zong He patted Tang Wan, letting him know that he shouldn't be afraid. He unhurriedly told his mother, "If you want to pull me back, then I'll go visit and even share a meal with you once a month. We can pretend to be a caring mother and a filial child. We can forgive and forget the things you've done in the past. If you still want to control me and want me to follow down the path you've drawn, even going so far as to manage my family's current affairs, then we have nothing more to talk about." Madame Zong gasped and her eyes turned red, tear uncontrollably falling down. "You want to anger me to death, how could I have given birth to this unfilial son? You won't be a good noble, insisting on serving in the army. I'm telling you, you must divorce this low-status person. It's for your own good. I'm your mother, how could I harm you?" Zong He laughed grimly. "It looks like we don't have anything good to talk about. I'll speak with you whenever my temper changes. See her off." Madame Zong's gaze froze. Who dares? Zong, he apathetically said. If you don't leave, I'll leave. I'll leave together with him. Madame Zong angrily stood up, return. Zong, he was already unwilling to respond and tugged on Tang Wan's hand, leaving in long strides. Tang Wan turned his head towards Madame Zong, earnestly telling her. I've pulled your son along. In the future, our child's surname will be Tang. Thank you for giving birth to such a good son. It really is convenient for me, let me bow to you. Once they were at a distance, Tang Wan was still slouched. He shrugged, then casually nodded. This time, Madame Zong was so furious that she had to sit down, not even having the strength to stand up. She had never seen a person like Tang Wan before. One Zong, he was enough to make her mad, and finding a partner that was like a vixen would anger her to death even more. How could there be a person like this? How could he? How could he? Madame Zong gasped for breath with a hand over her chest, tears streaming down. Lin Bo stood behind a pillar, calmly cracking melon seeds amidst the chaos. He saw that Madame Zong's complexion was deathly white and her lips were drained of color, hating that she couldn't breathe in the next second. Call the military doctor and have him come quickly. Lin Bo hurriedly arranged it, but his heart was filled with endless admiration for Tang Wan. In all his years, he had never seen someone with the courage to anger Madame Zong to this degree. After boarding the aircraft, Zong, he pulled Tang Wan closer in his embrace and pressed a kiss to his forehead. He guiltily said. You've been wronged. Tang Wan smiled and shook his head. No, I'm not familiar with her. Whatever she says, I'll take it as a stranger's words. The one who'd been wronged should be you. Zong, he laughed mockingly, I'm used to it. Tang Wan wrapped his arms around Zong He's shoulders and wordlessly comforted him. Zong He had gone through a life or death experience and lay in a coma for 3 years. During this time, there wasn't a single word of concern from his mother. In the year after he arrived, he still hadn't heard of Zong He's mother. He really didn't know what she was thinking, arranging for Zong He's divorce the moment she arrived. Anyway, he made her terribly angry this time, so in the future, her head should hurt whenever she sees him. She should be well behaved for a while. After the aircraft departed, they hovered above the ground. For a while, the two gazed at each other, laughing. Tang Wan asked. Are you eloping with me? Or am I eloping with you? Zong He rubbed the ring on Tang Wan's finger, you're eloping with me. I really am penniless. Tang Wan immediately puffed up his chest and delightedly said. I have money. I can make money to support you. Zong He licked the corners of his lips and leaned closer to Tang Wan. Before I let you support me, there's something I still need to confirm. You just said that you loved me. Was that true? Tang Wan laughed and held the other's face and planted a kiss on his lips, his forehead resting between Zong He's eyebrows. Disgruntled, he asked. Idiot, what do you think? Tang Wan was immediately pressed back onto the seat, kissed until he was breathless. The relevant people had already left, so sitting and stewing in anger would be meaningless for Madame Zong. After they left, she directly departed for the imperial palace to cry towards her nephew, the emperor. His Majesty had a headache. This little ant was nearly the same age as him and was higher in the family hierarchy than him. Even if she was pressuring him, he couldn't say anything. He could only hold his temper and say a few coaxing words. Soon, His Majesty was also bothered and claimed that he had something to do, using this excuse to quietly slip away, leaving behind the Empress with a helpless expression on her face. The Empress also had an incessant headache. She gracefully poured Madame Zong tea, little aunt, don't cry. Drink some tea and calm a little. Madame Zong wiped her tears and sighed, her expression full of distress. The Empress urged her. Younger cousin had already grown into an adult. You can't raise him like this. You must listen to him and use roundabout tactics. Madame Zong scowled, harshly asking. Me, listen to him. I gave birth to him, why should I listen to him? The Empress didn't panic and calmly poured more tea, grace in her every movement, because you can no longer control him, and he won't obediently listen to your words. Compared to a normal mother and child, you two don't even have the most basic of affections. If you don't think of ways to re-earn his heart, then in the future you won't even be able to be mother and son. The Empress's words didn't give Madame Zone much face, rendering her speechless because what she had said were all facts. Let him like whoever he wants to like, commoner or not. There isn't anything bad about commoners. Right now, nobility is just a title. In front of the law, everyone is equal. Nobles are also obligated to pay taxes, and the commoners also receive protection. You can't look down on commoners. Madame Zone retorted with a dissatisfied expression. That little vixen isn't a commoner, he's a low-life from a garbage planet. You also know that the people born there are from sentenced sinners with filthy blood. Their children will also have a low-life's blood. I won't allow the Zone family's descendants to have a low-life's blood. The Empress calmly replied. All right then, you won't even be able to have a mother and child's relationship, you can only be enemies. That little vixen. He not only. He. When Madame Zone thought of Tang Wan's demeanor and words and the way that he was delicately hanging off of Zone He, her chest throbbed in fury. Not only does he have a low-life's blood, he doesn't have any manners at all. He's just a little vixen that befuddles men. Growing up like that, he still acts coquettishly. He angers me to death. The Empress narrowed her eyes and sighed helplessly. This mother really didn't understand her own son. With Zone He's character, how could he accept a little vixen that only knew how to seduce men? If he really was that superficial, he would have found many such vixens, not only finding a partner when he was almost 30 years old. Waiting until Madame Zone left, the Emperor finally stealthily ran back, asking his wife. She left. Left. The Empress laughed helplessly. Younger cousin's temperament is too stiff, not listening to his mother at all. He really made her unbearably angry, and that little partner of his also isn't one to be bullied. The husband-wife pair angered the little aunt together until she cried. This time she really felt wrong, coming to us to cry. His Majesty laughed into his sleeve. If there's free time, we should call them over for a meal. I haven't seen him in such a long time. After speaking, His Majesty also worried and panicked. This mother and son pair still haven't settled matters. When Zone He was younger and couldn't rebel, he still wasn't willing to obey her. Later, he did rebel and simply didn't listen, almost being beaten to death by his mother. After uncle died, the little aunt probably went a little mad. Fortunately, they don't live together, otherwise, Tang Wan. Right, the child wouldn't survive past 3 days. His surname is Tang. Then isn't he from our daughter-in-law's family? The Empress unhappily pinched her husband's waist. You need to call them princess. Not daughter-in-law. If other people hear you, it would affect His Majesty's prestige. The Emperor covered his waist, grimacing in pain. Yes, what you said was right. Let our son see how his cousin has recovered, and ask the pair to come over for a meal. Wandering outside for a while, Tang Wan dragged Zone He towards the front of a shop for custom-made clothing. Right now, small shops couldn't be seen. There were only larger, well-known shops. The quality of the clothing they produced was guaranteed. We're going to order you a few sets of loungewear to wear at home. Zone He refused. Don't make then, it's not proper. Who isn't proper? Tang Wan retorted. How could not wearing a military uniform be considered improper? He looked at Zone He, who was wearing his proper uniform, and was tired for him. Normal people don't wear military uniforms at home. Everyone isn't proper then. Zone He furrows his brows. As a soldier, if he had Tang Wan's confrontation posture, he would have long since been given 800 drills to run. Unfortunately, Tang Wan was all soft skin and tender flesh. Zhong He would hate for Tang Wan to be subject to any grievances, and he couldn't let him be wronged. He could only be wronged himself. He enduringly tugged on Tang Wan's clothing. You're not proper. Tang Wan looked at his own body. What about my clothes aren't proper? With a cold expression, Zhong He closed the top button of Tang Wan's shirt. The button wasn't closed. The collar is too wide and the waist is too low. Tang Wan pursed his lips. What kind of clothing do you want me to wear? Are they proper? Normal people are dressed like this. I dress very securely. I'm not baring my chest. Zhong He scowled. You've gone mad. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. From the other's expression, he might have really gone mad. Baring one's chest was immoral, he understood. Zhong He patted his shoulder, solemnly saying. When you leave home, you should dress a little more properly. At home, you can dress as you wish. It's not that you can't go about bare-chested, you can do it in the bedroom, with the curtains drawn and the door shut. Tang Wan held his forehead. The actual crazy thing was standing in front of someone's shop, talking about the problem of being bare-chested in such a serious manner. Zhong He's heart softened. Fine then, I'll get you a set of military uniforms that can keep you warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It'll wrap you up completely and protect you from harm. Tang Wan quickly shook his head. He didn't want it at all. I'm not a soldier, I can't wear it. You're the family member of a soldier, you have the privilege. I should use my privilege here just because I can. Supposedly, there's a day for the family members of soldiers every year, and you can get a discount when you go shopping. Tang Wan nodded. The last statement did seem to have its practical uses. At this time, he heard Zhong He's question. You don't have fur, so will you be cold in the winter? How about I make you a fur coat? You, remain calm. In Tang Wan's mind, a big black bear immediately popped up, the cubby and motionless kind. The corner of Zhong He's mouth curled up, finally amused by Tang Wan's reaction. Tang Wan only reacted to this, so the big cat would tease him. Tang Wan also laughed. Isn't your heart black? Ah. At this moment, an aircraft passed through. An old and white-haired elderly man just so happened to see Tang Wan standing at the entrance with Zhong He facing him. He couldn't see Zhong He's face, but Tang Wan's laughing expression was clean and distinct. The elderly man's eyes suddenly widened in shock, looking at Tang Wan's familiar face. His face instantly drained of blood and he shuddered. He told the young attendant behind him. We're returning home right now. The attendant unexpectedly responded, Lian Bo, did you drop something? I can call someone to deliver it here. No, the elderly man wiped away the sweat that had already formed on his head. I need to see the Duke now. We're returning. It's not quite New Year's for me, but Happy New Year to those where it is. Asterisk greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Chapter 45. Just Who Am I? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker from the last chapter. At this moment, an aircraft passed through. An old and white-haired elderly man just so happened to see Tang Wan standing at the entrance with Zhong He facing him. He couldn't see Zhong He's face, but Tang Wan's laughing expression was clean and distinct. The elderly man's eyes suddenly widened in shock, looking at Tang Wan's familiar face. His face instantly drained of blood and he shuddered. He told the young attendant behind him. We're returning home right now. The attendant unexpectedly responded, Lian Bo, did you drop something? I can call someone to deliver it here. No, the elderly man wiped away the sweat that had already formed on his head. I need to see the Duke now. We're returning. This elderly man wasn't just a passerby, he was Tang Lian, the old housekeeper of Duke Tang's residence. He was already in his old age and was already unconcerned with the household situations, enjoying his retirement. When he returned to the Duke's mansion, Tang Lian had already quieted and immediately requested an audience with Duke Tang. Tang Jinshi saw that there was something off about the housekeeper's expression and he dismissed everyone else. With a calm expression, he sat down and asked. What happened? Master, I was just on the streets of Beta Ursi Minories and I saw that the eldest young master. Tang Jinshi's solemn face showed a bit of doubt. Isn't the eldest young master in school? What did he go out for? Tang Lian lowered his voice, sounding even older and rougher, not this one, it's that one. What did you say? Tang Jinshi suddenly stood up, his solemn and unflustered expression changing. Panicked, he grabbed onto the table for support, his fingertips pale white. Tang Lian solemnly nodded, it is, even if the emotions I could see from his gaze and his temperament changed a great deal, I had watched him grow up. It wasn't a mistake. Duke Tang pressed down onto the table and slowly sat down, he's still alive, still alive, still alive ah. Saying, still alive, 3 times, Duke Tang's mood was extremely complicated. As a father, the fact that his son was still alive was undoubtedly something that would make him gratified. His late wife was already gone, so if he couldn't keep his eldest son, he would be too ashamed to face his late wife. If it weren't for his eldest son's spiritual strength diminishing lower and lower, gradually becoming an ordinary person, he wouldn't have callously shut him away. To preserve his family's honor, he could only sacrifice his freedom, letting his second eldest replace him, maintaining the engagement with the imperial family. He never would have thought that he would be able to escape. If this matter was exposed and the imperial family found out, the entire Tang family would be buried. Thinking of this, Duke Tang's expression twisted even more. Immediately, he resentfully asked. Where is he? Why didn't you bring him back? Tang Lian was embarrassed and replied. He was shopping with a young officer who wasn't wearing his military rank, so I didn't know who he was. I was worried that I would inadvertently alarm them, so I came back first to report to you. Tang Jinshi's voice darkened. I understand. You cannot breathe a word about this situation. Do not let Tinxi know. The most important thing is looking into who the person beside him is. If it can be settled, bring him back for me. Who's back? At this time, Lady Tang stood in the doorway of the study, with a cup of black tea in her hands. Her eyes were soft and gentle, and her gaze towards Duke Tang was pure. Duke Tang's expression eased, raising his hand to indicate that she could enter. Lady Tang laughed sweetly and closed the door, placing the Duke's favorite black tea onto the table. Drinking the tea that his wife steeped herself, Duke Tang's chest loosened. He rejoiced again over making the correct decision all those years ago. His wife's temperament hadn't changed in so many years and was still kind-hearted, warm, and without schemes. Her gaze was still like a young lady admiring an adult. At the time, his former wife was pregnant with their eldest son. As it turns out, his wife was also pregnant. He was taking care of his family and not her, but she unexpectedly didn't have a single complaint. When his former wife passed away, Tinxi was still young. He brought the mother and child back, letting him take care of the 3 children. Taking care of them as if they were her own for so many years, he was endlessly pleased. My lady, you've worked hard these past few years. Lady Tang laughed delightedly, her eyes curving, what are you suddenly saying? Duke Tang sighed, it's nothing. If I talk about it with you, you'll worry so much that you can't sleep. We'll see in the future. Alright, then I'll listen to you. The corner of Lady Tang's lips twitched slightly, hiding the murderous resentment in her eyes. That little bastard was still alive. Tang Wan was really taken by Zhong He to order several sets of clothing. Under Tang Wan's insistence, he didn't order anything like a military uniform. The material used was the special material used in combat. It was cozy, lightweight, and convenient. It could also reportedly protect against injuries. After they finished, Tang Wan wanted to return home. When he was free, he only wanted to lounge at home. He was also worried, has your mother left? Why hasn't Lin Bo sent a message? She left, Zhong He confidently said. She's a mental case that still wants face. She wouldn't shamelessly hang on and refuse to leave. Tang Wan heard the tone of his voice and there was an indescribable ache in his heart. This pitiful big child, he was like this because of his mother's torment. After they returned home, Tang Wan lay down on the sofa, tired. He didn't want to move. Zhong He unhappily rubbed his flat stomach. He picked up a pastry from the table and stuffed it into Tang Wan's mouth. His tone was still unhappy. Your physical strength is this bad. I wanted to teach you how to shoot in the afternoon. Tang Wan was similarly displeased, why do I need to learn how to use that toy? You need to learn to protect yourself. As part of a soldier's family, how could you not know how to use a gun? Tang Wan pointed at the platter of pastries on the table, I'm hungry. Zhong He quickly stuffed in another piece then glanced at Ji Yan, who was standing nearby. Ji Yan understood Zhong He's gaze and went to rush lunch without delay. Tang Wan spoke while eating. I'm very weak. I was especially clumsy when I went to play that battlefield game with the guns. I was following another person from beginning to end. Zhong He raised his eyebrows, this clumsy. After speaking, the marshal felt that such a frank statement would hurt his partner's face. So he very awkwardly consoled him. It's fine, that was just a game. It's very different from the real thing. Tang Wan unhappily stuffed a biscuit into Zhong He's mouth. The real thing was even more difficult than a game, he knew. After lunch, Tang Wan went to sleep. He wasn't the least bit excited about learning. Zhong He pulled over a blanket with an expressionless face. As he prepared to fall asleep, he strictly warned him. You can sleep now, but when you wake up, you must learn. Tang Wan calmly settled down and yawned, oh. Zhong He watched Tang Wan sleep for half an hour, stifled. He couldn't help but move closer, falling asleep with him. That evening, having learned that Zhong He was going to teach Tang Wan how to protect himself and not having school, the leopard twins, who had taken time to run back home, looked at him with sympathetic gazes. The younger brother quietly whispered to Tang Wan. The level of the marshal's teaching is really. It's hard to say. Tang Wan immediately doubted Zhong He's ability to teach people. The two children's gazes told him that ordinary people wouldn't be able to bear it. Soon, Tang Wan knew how unreasonable Zhong He was when he was teaching. Zhong He gave him a gun and placed it on the table, leaving it alone. Tang Wan was stupefied, and then what? Zhong He questioned. What else is there afterwards? Even an idiot would know how to use it. Tang Wan looked at the gun, which was totally different to the ones he had seen before. He touched several of the buttons, expression full of confusion. He looked at it and he still didn't know how to use it. Zhong He tisked, you really are foolish. Tang Wan angrily glared at him, why don't I bite you? You want to be a rogue. Tang Wan rolled his eyes, you're thinking too much. Zhong He went over and stood behind Tang Wan, overbearingly wrapping his arms around his waist, you've agreed to act as a rogue. Tang Wan turned his head and gave the shameless big cat a look, letting him slowly realize that he already didn't want to say more. Zhong He resentfully asked. Why are you still being so difficult? Tang Wan remained silent. Who was being difficult? Then are you embarrassed? You humans really are troublesome. Tang Wan nodded. Right, what he said was right. Truthfully speaking, he felt that he was unable to keep up with a beastman's thinking. Zhong He placed his shoulder on Tang Wan's shoulder like a clingy big cat, it doesn't matter if you're foolish either. I can teach you once again tomorrow. Once. How many more times do you want? Tang Wan gave up struggling. Zhong He's shocked manner let him feel like if he spoke more about it, he would die foolish. The next day, many people ran over to watch the marshal teach his wife to use a gun. Most of the soldiers had been taught by Zhong He. It was like they were watching a good play. A few of them gathered together to secretly gossip, say, if the marshal can't help but scold Furin and says that his brain grows on his feet, do you think he would make him sleep on the sofa? Probably not, Furin looks like he doesn't have much of a temper. Would he dare to rebel? What I'm worried about is that the marshal won't be able to control himself and raise his hand against him. Several of the soldiers subconsciously raised their shoulders, feeling the pain all over their bodies. They looked at the two people nervously, afraid that the marshal would lose control and raise his claws. Lin Bo approached them, standing behind the few soldiers. What are you doing here? The captain pointed inside. I'm afraid that the marshal will get angry and hit Furin. If he really does, I can brave death and bear it. Furin really wouldn't be able to endure his hit. Several of the soldiers immediately nodded. Right, they weren't just watching some exciting event, they were protecting Furin. Then you can stand here and watch. Lin Bo slowly walked away, unwilling to acknowledge the group of foolish youths. Tang Wan pinched a trigger and asked, puzzled. How do you use this? It's too advanced, I haven't seen this before. The soldiers were nervous, guessing that the marshal's next words would be. Are you stupid? Not knowing what this thing is, how did you graduate from military school? I knew how to use this when I was 3 years old. They all secretly broke out in a sweat for Tang Wan and for Zhong He. Control your temper, marshal, this was related to the harmony of married life. At this time, they saw Zhong He, who had an ultra-bad temper when he was teaching, use his hand to grip Tang Wan's and pulled his entire body into his own. He used his other hand to help him pull open the safety. You open the safety like this. When you're not using it, you can push it back in. Soldiers. The first time Tang Wan used it, he didn't dare to use too much force, nervously using it incorrectly. Zhong He sighed, unhappily glancing at him. He used a finger to push it open. You didn't use enough force. You need to eat more. Tang Wan's lips twitched. He was unhappy at him again. The few soldiers looked at each other in dismay. It shouldn't be that they'll receive a slap if they go up. Did his discontent gaze look like he was looking at a rice tub? Or was it an uncleaned rice tub? After Tang Wan popped it open, he cocked his head. There was an indescribably familiar feeling. I somehow feel that it should be like this. Tang Wan aimed the gun at the dummy, his finger already on the trigger. Relying on his instincts, he fired 3 shots. Every shot hit the dummy between the eyes. After he finished, Tang Wan himself was stunned and was so scared he tossed the gun away. He jumped up, fuck. Zhong He was also a little surprised. Tang Wan's marksmanship was very good. It wasn't at all like someone who had never learned. With such a small amount of practice, it shouldn't be so accurate. In addition, he also hit the most vulnerable part. He shouldn't know to aim at that area if he hadn't been trained before. At the moment, however, the person that was most afraid wasn't someone else, but Tang Wan himself. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Tang Wan looked at his hand and didn't dare believe it. Did you install automatic shooting on this gun? I couldn't shoot like that. I've never seen it before. Zhong He had no choice but to press down on his shoulder, so that he wouldn't keep bouncing around. This allowed him to understand one thing. When encountering something frightening, Beastman's fur would puff up, but for furless humans, they could only jump up and down. You have great talent, 100 times better than those so-called military geniuses. Zhong He praised Tang Wan with a serious face, making Tang Wan embarrassed. Really? Zhong He nodded, glancing at the soldiers standing past the window, who had been watching the bustling scene. He solemnly said, boosting Tang Wan's confidence, you're better than they are. They're talented students that graduated from military academy, their combat abilities are all A+. However, compared to you, who hasn't even seen what a gun looked like before, their shooting ability is trash. Soldiers. They had been watching a lively show only to have it flipped into a teaching moment. The corners of Tang Wan's lips curled up. He was also delighted. He really was a damn genius. Whoever said he was a rookie could come, and he'd shoot them with unfailing accuracy. Tang Wan excitedly picked up the gun again, like a child who had gotten a new toy. He wanted to test it again. Zong He looked at his standard posture, like he had practiced it countless times and the habit had been ingrained in his body. His eyes gradually darkened. How do you know you need this position to shoot? Tang Wan didn't even think to hit someone's head and chest. You can't leave any survivors because you could be killed in the next second. Zong He frowned. Without the experience of killing someone, such words couldn't be said. Do you remember who taught you such words? Tang Wan shook his head, but then suddenly realized something. His face instantly paled. I couldn't have been a bad person before, the kind that kills people. More plot and a bonus KO.fi chapter. Chapter CH 46.1. Fuck. It's a heart-moving feeling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous editor. Walker Zong He massaged Tang Wan's head and confidently telling him. No, don't be afraid. Your hands are very clean. You wouldn't have a criminal record, or else you wouldn't have been genetically matched with me. Tang Wan gave a quiet sigh. His words were very convincing, but he didn't know what the original had experienced. He was still unsure. Now, Tang Wan wanted to know what had happened before and who had poisoned him, how he had gotten onto the garbage planet, who forged the counterfeit identity for him, who had taught him how to use a gun, and how he had died. Dying was one thing, but he still wanted to know why he died. Zong He saw that he still placed a lot of importance on it, and he lightly rubbed his nape, like a big cat would do to a small kitten. He appeasingly rubbed. Relax, we can find what you want to know. I can arrange for it. Tang Wan clearly understood that Zong He could secretly find someone to investigate it. Then, if what you discover isn't what you expected or it touches your bottom line. Tang Wan was a little anxious. Zong He was a man with a strong sense of responsibility. He also had a soldier's honesty, so if Tang Wan didn't want to think about it. If the other discovered something that violated his principles, then was it possible for their marriage to continue? If his heart hadn't been moved, it wouldn't matter. The problem now was that he already wanted to stay together with Zong He. Tang Wan's heart seized. Zong He unhappily patted him on the head. Idiot, it's also fine like this, so you don't have to practice more. I hope that you would never have to use it in your life, but if there's danger, I want you to still have a way to defend yourself. In this way, you really are natural partner material. Very good. Tang Wan's eyes brightened. Are you exaggerating? Zong He didn't want to speak. Still not understanding with such a frank statement, he should get the chef to cook some brain for him to eat. Supposedly, eating something would repair the function of that thing. Being looked at with such a discontented gaze, Tang Wan was too embarrassed to ask again. When cats didn't like you and used such a gaze, it really was unbearable to look at. That day, the news of the Marshal's Furin being an amazing gunman spread through the guards. The soldiers didn't dare to believe it. Is it true or fake? Is there such a fantasy? The Marshal's Furin looks so weak and short. Tang Wan was actually an average height of 1.76 meters. However, in this galaxy, the average human height had surpassed 1.8 meters. Tang Wan also had a small, thin frame. Using a military doctor's words, he definitely didn't have enough nutrients when he was young. His bones hadn't grown. So when Tang Wan, who was as strong as a calf, was compared to the soldiers, he truly was weak and short. There were also soldiers that snorted disdainfully at such words. Those who had seen Tang Wan toss a flower vase at the marshal had an incomparable admiration for him. You can't just look at him to see if he's weak, Furin dared to fight the marshal. What does marksmanship count for? The only one who dares to fight the marshal is a true man. The true man Tang Wan, who was standing in the flower garden and obscured by wild roses. He expressionlessly cut a vase full of flowers. Tang Wan carried the flower vase and leisurely walked past the several soldiers. He really wanted to puff up his chest and say, "No, not only can I use a gun, I can also earn money. Your marshal is being raised by me." Tang Wan placed the flower vase in the live broadcasting room and stood back at the doorway. He sniffed to ensure that it absolutely couldn't be smelled from the corridor and wouldn't affect Zhong He's sense of smell. Only then could he leave the flower vase there, reassured. Tang Wan planned to have a 1-hour live broadcast after dinner. There were bastards who had money and didn't try to earn more. Those who stayed idle and didn't try to make money were ashamed to their own profession. After the appropriate preparations, Tang Wan sent out a notification on Weibo. Eating, sleeping, and scolding de Zhuang. Starting a live broadcast tonight that starts at 8 o'clock and ends at 9 o'clock. If you're free, come and chat. The comments all said for him. See you there. After the live broadcast started, Tang Wan was sitting on a chair with a plate of fruit in his hands. He used a fork to pick up and eat a piece of fruit, simultaneously chatting with everyone. "I went out to play today and bought some things. It was a lot of fun." As he spoke, he held the fork in his mouth, pointing towards the small pile of gadgets on the ground. Everyone was curious about what types of fun things he had bought. After staring at it, they were all dumbfounded. "Are you a princess that lives in a castle? These are all ordinary toys. Toys that little children play with. Don't tell us that you've never played with these before." Tang Wan cocked his head and innocently said, "I really have never played with these before." The audience all pitied him. His family's background definitely wasn't good, not even having any toys to play with. Looking at the expensive ring he was wearing now, he also hadn't known how much the ring was worth back then. He maintained the impression that he was a country bumpkin. Many people threw him rewards so that when he was free, he could go out and buy some things to play with. It really was because he was too inexperienced, letting people's hearts ache. Upon hearing Tang Wan's words, there was only one person whose eyes were reddened. His resentment was like a sharp dagger. It had been stuck in his head since he was a child so that he didn't dare forget. He was the little duke of the Tang family, Tang Tinji. He knew that what Tang Wan was saying was true. He'd never seen such things before, much less played with them. The retainer opened the unlocked door and stood by it, respectfully saying, "Young master, the duke wants you to go to his study." Tang Tinji gave a faint hum of agreement. He gracefully stood up and fixed his jacket, tossing Tang Wan a moderately sized reward. Only then did he withdraw from the live broadcast. His ID was surprising. Crazy Luo Bei. No one knew that the graceful and noble little Duke Tang had a crazy side. Hidden under his graceful and noble appearance was a crazy, murder-addicted soul. In the live broadcasting room, Tang Wan continued to eat his fruit. He beamed and chatted with everyone. "Before I was married, I was a poor country person, the kind that couldn't fill their own stomach." This was the first time that Tang Wan himself admitted to being married. Before, he had been ambiguous and vague. Even if he wore the ring, he didn't admit it out loud. Now, seeing that he could easily speak of it, much of the audience was deeply moved. "You married so well." There were also people who admired Tang Wan. "I also want to find someone who can raise me. I don't want to do anything, I just want to pet cats." Still others said, "What's so good about that? You start out as a vegetable, then go out with a wheelchair." If they didn't treat him well, they're a slag. Tang Wan looked at his own ring and laughed. He really wasn't a slag. The marshal couldn't treat him any better. It was a bother to him as a soldier for him to have to get him clothing, buy things for him to play around with, and to teach himself defense. Tang Wan thought that if they discovered exactly who the person they called a slag was one day, their glasses would surely all fall off. But much of the audience sighed regretfully. But Tang's partner is rich, to be able to buy such an expensive ring. The barrage became a flurry. Don't be foolish, a partner's private property couldn't be obtained at all. They weren't Tang's. Tang actually earned a lot. Looking at the earnings for the entire circle, Tang never dipped below third place. This wasn't adding in his advertisement and endorsement fees. As soon as this was mentioned, there were some fans who immediately felt sorry for Tang Wan. The other's status should be very high, so high that Tang Wan couldn't reject the privilege. At this time, there was a person who asked. Does your partner and Marshal Zhong He have a very good relationship? At that moment, Tang Wan almost spat out the melon in his mouth. He gave this talent a like. Good, especially good. The barrage. Wow. It's a senior military officer then, someone who has a family of rich merchants or even a noble. Tang Wan swallowed the last bite of the melon, don't mention livelihood. I'd like to introduce you all to some new species today. Tang Wan first let the little female raccoon out and the audience's eyes were immediately drawn away. Isn't this Shi Shua Shua? Tang Wan seriously introduced. No, this is Shi Shua Shua's wife, Chui Hua. Barrage. In the end, it was still a Meng pet that couldn't escape the fate of being called Chui Hua. Hello Chui Hua, your name is very fresh and clean, free from vulgarities. Your daddy is still your daddy, but your daddy's naming style is just as maddening as ever. When Tang has a child in the future, please give the naming responsibilities to your partner. Don't take it on yourself, please. Let the child go, let your partner go. Tang Wan resentfully pointed at them, what do you guys understand? The children named like this are all robust and strong and are in good health. The audience laughed out of habit. You're good looking, so you can have the final say. Quickly carry on to the next step. Only then was Tang Wan satisfied. He continued his introduction to everyone, I'm introducing it to you all, these are the little squirrels that I just summoned. It has a big, fluffy tail, and its body is well-shaped and nimble. It likes to eat nuts. Tang Wan took out a handful of chestnuts and a few walnuts, placing them on the table. He let the two pets pick it themselves. They were both very shy. They used their paws to feel around and every time they reached out, they would only take the one closest to them. Tang Wan nodded, earnestly saying. Very good, it had a name. The audience slammed on a table. Then you know. Those two were very casually decided upon. You don't need to say it, we understand. One of them is called Chestnut, and the other is called Walnut. How cute. They know how to jump, and their teeth are very ferocious. Ahahaha. Tang Wan gave the person in the barrage who had guessed correctly a like. You're very smart. This one is called Chestnut, and the other is called Walnut. The barrage was a wave of. You're good looking, you can have the final say, we've already given up struggling. Tang Wan called out Shi Shua Shua, telling it. Shi Shua Shua, you'll be the peaceful ambassador and go play with them. Shi Shua Shua looked over at the two rodents with the big tails. It amicably helped them pick up the nuts. It turned around and looked at Tang Wan's cup of water, then placed the pieces of dried fruits and nuts in, washing it. It took them out and handed them to the little squirrels. The pacifist Shi Shua Shua was especially friendly towards others. Tang Wan. The audience went wild with laughter. Ha 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 ha, it really is a peaceful ambassador. It's really polite. Daddy Tang, don't be modest. Drink the water your child used to wash its hands with, otherwise, it would be a waste. Ha 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 ha, washing its hands in a cup of water. This action is incredible. Buy fruit for Shi Shua Shua. Buy meat for Shi Shua Shua. You all are buying things for Shi Shua Shua. Not me. I'll buy Tang Tang a water cup. Seeing so many rewards, Tang Wan decided to buy 10 cups after the live broadcast was over. He'd gift that one to Shi Shua Shua. Say, would you guys like cold-blooded creatures? Such as snakes, chameleons, lizards, and fish. Tang Wan remembered that in his last life, there were a lot of people that liked and raised these kinds of pets. No matter how much humanity had evolved, what they like wouldn't have changed, to say nothing of the beast men that could shift into cold-blooded creatures. Once he thought of this, Tang Wan shivered all over. He thanked the Empire's AI for knowing that he liked cats and allowing him to marry a big cat. If he had married a fish, he would be forced to think of a way to stew him. A lot of audience members enthusiastically shouted. Like. No matter what creature it is, it only has to be a Meng pet and will come. It doesn't matter, I don't have fur. Is a cold-blooded creature not good? Have you finally unlocked a new map? I feel like I'm taking an adventure every day. Want. Summon. Poor Tang Wan. Chapter 46.2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous editor. Walker in his heart, Tang Wan felt that their preferences really were omnivorous. Tang Wan opened the system in his mind and found the chameleons inside. Looking at its furless skin, he suppressed his unhappy expression and bought one. I'm introducing it to everyone. This is a chameleon, an animal that once lived on Earth. There was also a certain group of people that liked them, raising them in their homes as Meng pets. They have a very special ability, comparable to advanced technology. Tang Wan placed the chameleon on the table, letting the people observe it clearly. He specially glanced at the barrage, looking to see if this group of people dared to touch it. The facts were proven, the people of the future were formidable. They were really all daring enough to touch anything. The barrage was talking about its body and the feeling of its skin. Tang Wan accepted it. Tang Wan pulled a few sheets of multicolored paper from a drawer, left over from a craft he had done earlier. He lined up the papers of the 7 colors of the rainbow. Tang Wan took a small stick and poked the chameleon's butt, pushing it to move forward. At this time, the people noticed that for every color the chameleon was in front of, it would shift to that color. It was the same as its background. The audience applauded. Amazing. This ability is really amazing. I know of a giant mythical creature on a deserted garbage planet that eats garbage. A lot of people went to go and catch it, but couldn't get one. It can reportedly make itself invisible. Is this little thing that thing's ancestor? Edmel.co Tang Wan was shocked. Damn. The evolutionary version of Godzilla was here. Afterward, everyone was talking about the 2 new types of creatures that had just been summoned. Tang Wan actually didn't want to raise any more furless creatures, feeling that it burned his eyes too much. He simply told them the story of Godzilla, the most incredible bald brother. He could beat up Ultraman, that cool. The audience knew that Tang Wan was chattering to amuse them, but they still listened in rapt attention. They talked all the way to 9 o'clock. Tang Wan told everyone. Shouldn't we all shower and go to sleep? The audience didn't want to leave, yelling out. We can listen to this story for 200 more years. Tang Wan laughed. But I can't talk for 200 more years. Audience. You have to believe in yourself, you can do it. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They still believed he could do it. However, whether the audience wanted it or not, Tang Wan needed to go offline. To make it up to you, we'll summon a great devil. The audience was left on a cliffhanger. Just what kind of creature could be called a great devil by Tang Wan? Tang Tang is too evil. I can't sleep in peace for a few days. I want to see it now. I don't want to sleep, I want to see. I want to see. I want to see. The audience was being noisy. Tang Wan thought for a moment, I'll tell you an old tale then. After I finish it, you must go to sleep. The audience sincerely agreed. Okay, Tang Wan solemnly sat up straight and began. Once upon a time, there was a mountain, and on top of the mountain, there was a temple. In the temple, there was an old Buddhist monk. What was the old Buddhist monk doing? The audience was curious. What was he doing? The old Buddhist monk was telling the little Buddhist monk a story. What story was he telling? The audience was still curious. What story? Tang Wan couldn't contain himself and wanted to laugh. What he told was, once upon a time, there was a mountain, and on top of the mountain, there was a temple. In the temple, there was an old Buddhist monk telling the little Buddhist monk a story, and what he told was #K2026, #K2026, audience. Come on, I want to sleep. Negative comment. Negative comment. Negative comment. This story will last an entire night. Having angered an entire row of audience members, Tang Wan laughed as he went offline. When he thought of them being so mad that they would jump about furiously, he was in a very good mood. As a result, "I'll tell you a story" became another popular internet phrase after "your IQ is only suitable for transporting seedlings" and "Shinju Gu, who'll lick your face." Not long after Tang Wan finished his live broadcast, a teacher at Research Institute for the Evolution of Living Creatures gave the students an assignment: go watch eating, sleeping, and scolding de Zhuang's live broadcast. Look at what pets he has. Look at what the ancestors of the giant mythical creatures are like. Take good notes, you will be tested on it in the future. The material of an internet star's live broadcast would be on an exam. This internet star was definitely an angel. The group of students, who scratched their heads every day over their exams, were tempted to give sacrificial offerings to the fairy Tang Wan. Finally, they could openly go online. They were watching an internet star to study. As a result, these messages were left on Tang Wan's Weibo. Millions of students kneel before your live broadcast. Suffering students kneel and beg the little big brother for mercy. Millions of students write letters in blood, begging to see Meng pets. Little big brother, quickly do a live broadcast. My assignments are waiting for you to give me more material. After he saw these messages, Tang Wan asked. Students. Comments. Bitterly, suffering, students. Tang Wan sent them a little small red flower. Students are the flowers of the empire's future. Study hard every day and you will improve. Struggle for the betterment of the empire. Students. It's like seeing a bald, middle-aged homeroom teacher. He's an old class, you're a younger class. Other fans. What's your class monitor's ID? Students. Our class monitor is Turtledove. After Turtledove looked at the countless familiar IDs, he sneered and angrily gnawed on a Big Mac. Turtledove felt that waiting for a live broadcast every day was a waste of time. Looking at Tang Wan's live broadcasting records, he determined that Tang Wan decided to broadcast on the day of, once every 3 to 5 days with uncertain frequency. So he sought out the teacher and asked. Why don't you directly hire him to become a teacher here? I saw his previous live broadcasts, and he knows a lot about the subject. The true bald, middle-aged homeroom teacher gave him a lecture. Nonsense. Could anyone just become a teacher? An internet celebrity coming to our school to become a teacher, where would our school put our face? Turtledove was disappointed. What generation was it that still needed face? Face wouldn't make a stomach full. Just when Tang Wan opened his eyes early the next morning, he was contacted by Good Baby production company's Bo Li Chiao. The 10 million endorsement fee has been discussed with the upper levels. The money and the contract is ready. When you have time, we can meet up on the Starnet and sign the contract. Tang Wan immediately responded. Today is fine, you can set the specific time. Bo Li Chiao. What about 10 o'clock in the morning? Tang Wan. Okay. The place the two had agreed on was where they had met before. When Tang Wan got out of bed, Zhong He had already washed his face and brushed his teeth. Looking at Tang Wan's beaming expression, Zhong He slightly raised his eyebrows. "You're in such a good mood. Of course, there's a lot of money coming in. I should be able to get the endorsement fee I spoke to you about earlier today. I'm meeting and speaking with them this morning." Zhong He agreed. "You don't need to cover your face, go confidently." Tang Wan laughed and nodded. He went to go wash his face and rinse his mouth in an excellent move. He thought of something after he picked up his toothbrush and turned his head to tell Zhong He. "I want to eat seafood egg soup in the morning." Zhong He listened to his lively tone, and the corner of his lips immediately curled up. "All right. Oh, we also discovered who Crazy Luo Bei is. However, it's not that this military genius doesn't have the money to attend military school, he goes to a noble's academy." "Noble?" Amazed, Tang Wan stopped his hand's movements. "A 16-year-old noble young master plays games with gun battles. The talented commander of the 1,000-man regiment." N. Zhong He's darkened eyes took in Tang Wan's astonished expression. "His instincts aren't too bad. You can play with him, but this child's methods are too ruthless. He's destructive in battle, and when you play with him, you can restrict him a little. Does this child have a very blood-thirsty side in reality?" Tang Wan frowned. It would be a pity if he grew up crooked. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Tang Wan and Bo Li Qiao met at the place where they met the last time. Looking at Tang Wan's completely uncovered face, Bo Li Qiao stared blankly for a few seconds. He suddenly asked a question similar to Su Mi's. "Do you want to come to my company as a spokesperson?" Tang Wan laughed and tactfully declined. "I can just rely on my pets and my face to eat. I don't need it." Bo Li Qiao's gaze fell on the ring on his hand, and he felt that what he had said was a little foolish. "Then it's fine, we can speak about Jin Xiaopeng's endorsement." Bo Li Qiao gave Tang Wan a copy of the contract. "This is what we had agreed upon in advance. We don't need Jin Xiaopeng to do much. You just need to supply photographs and we can print its image on the logo on merchandise." Tang Wan read the contract carefully to ensure that it didn't have any problems. "Okay, you can tell me what style of photograph you want 3 days in advance, and I can give them to you." Good. If there are special requirements, we can send a photographer over." At that time, Bo Li Qiao laughed. "Is that okay?" "Yes," Tang Wan smiled and said. "I can go to the photography studio and wait for you. You can take whatever picture you like." Bo Li Qiao was relieved with Tang Wan's cooperation. Then there aren't any problems. Happy cooperation. Tang Wan signed his name, and Bo Li Qiao saved the video recording after he signed his own name. The amount wasn't small, so he did everything in detail. After the official business, the two began to chat. Bo Li Qiao suggested. "The toys from before sold very well. You can come up with a few more." Tang Wan thought, what about a cat nest? They're beds for cats with fun designs. Would they be classified as household goods? It'd be classified with the cat scratching boards. Fun things. That's good. Do canines have such things? Like wolves and foxes? Yes, Tang Wan solemnly guaranteed. You can see the ones for canines very quickly. There were still 3 sled dogs, the little devils that could tear down a house. After going offline, Tang Wan wasn't in a hurry to make cat toys. He planned to design the cat nest first and then find someone to make the materials. He planned to sell it to the company that made children's daily necessities. Then he customized some of the parts for the cat sticks. He could make tutorials, teaching beastmen how to make cat sticks for their children. Just when he opened the graphic software, Ji Yen went upstairs to call him. "Furen, His Majesty the Crown Prince has arrived. The Marshal wants you to come down for a little while." "Crown Prince?" Tang Wan cocked his head. In other words, the future successor of the empire. How fresh! His Highness, a living crown prince. Tang Wan went downstairs and saw the cultured and refined youth sitting in the living room. He was in his early 20s, had blonde hair, and his eyes that they were unexpectedly heterochromatic. Tang Wan immediately felt his heart skip a beat. Fuck. It's a heart moving feeling. But the moment His Majesty the Crown Prince saw Tang Wan, his entire being was stunned speechless. You know Zone, he's gonna drink gallons of vinegar, Omega. Chapter ch 47.1. You look like an old acquaintance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. Once Tang Wan saw His Majesty the Crown Prince, he was inexplicably reminded of a white cat with heterochromatic eyes he had raised before. It was very beautiful and good-natured. Its cry was coy and very coquettish. The Crown Prince restrained his surprise. He stood up, politely asking, "Should I call you Biao Shu or Shermu?" Looking at Tang Wan, who was close in age to himself, the Crown Prince muffled his laughter. When he was addressing people, there was still a little bit of confusion. Shermu. From the other's attitude, it seemed that he was regarding himself as a member of the younger generation. Tang Wan looked doubtfully at Zhong He. What was going on between the two? Zhong He had seen Tang Wan's absent-minded expression when he first saw the Crown Prince. There was something that he had taken even more to heart. When he saw Tang Wan and the Crown Prince together, he was in a very bad mood. However, he couldn't continuously hide Tang Wan and not let him meet other people. Zhong He uncomfortably said. Call him little uncle. I don't have a dumb student like you. I still have to teach you during times of war. Tang Wan thought to himself that his position in the family was incredible. He was being called uncle by the Crown Prince, and when the Crown Prince became the emperor in the future, he would have the emperor as a big nephew. Zhong He glanced at the seat beside him, hinting to Tang Wan that he should come and sit. He must sit beside him, 100% possessive. The Crown Prince awkwardly laughed, and took the gift from an attendant's arms, preparing to give the present. In everyone's eyes, he was extremely talented and all of his teachers praised him as a genius. Only his uncle would discontentedly call him dumb and even beat him up. The two bodyguards at his side looked at the Crown Prince sympathetically. It wasn't easy to learn from the marshal because he was a natural military commander. He wouldn't tell you how to fight the battle, but would discuss it with you. If you couldn't keep up with his train of thought, he would smack you on the head and call you an idiot. The Crown Prince had been smacked a countless number of times on the head by Zhong He. Like a big cat smacking a kitten, he'd use his paw to pa, from the age of 5 to the age of 20. This is the wedding gift that my mother prepared. Uncle had hidden it so well that we didn't even know that you had gotten married. Now, mother and father are very apologetic. They want to invite both of you to come share a meal and so they can give an apology. The Crown Prince directly handed the gift to Tang Wan. After the other received, he sat back down. Tang Wan courteously thanked the other, then looked at the other's gaze, embarrassed. He was afraid that he'd get lost in thought. It wouldn't be polite. However, the Crown Prince felt that Tang Wan looked a little familiar and subconsciously stared at him more. At this time, Zhong He spoke, if you don't have any other matters, you can go back. Tang Wan's fingers stopped and he uncomprehendingly looked at Zhong He. Was he ordering the guests to leave? He hadn't even finished a cup of water. Zhong He's expression sank more and more, his entire body exuding a terrible aura. The Crown Prince understood his uncle's temperament very well. Even if he didn't know why, he immediately stood up. I just remembered that I had something to do, I won't trouble you anymore. When uncle wants to bring the little uncle over to have dinner, please let us know in advance and we can let people prepare. Zhong He gave an indifferent N. His gaze was urging him to quickly leave. The Crown Prince made a swift exit. Tang Wan. Why? It was very difficult for him to finally spot a heterochromatic feline beast-man. Why couldn't he talk to him a little more? Seeing that Tang Wan was still holding the gift box like he was holding a treasure, Zhong He resentfully asked. You like that? Tang Wan blinked, suddenly sensing that Zhong He's mood wasn't quite right. You, don't tell me that you're drinking vinegar. Zhong He gave him a cold smile, is there even a chance for me to drink it? Tang Wan thought that he was correct, right, there's no chance. Zhong He turned his head with a cold expression, not looking at Tang Wan. Besides, he was purposely being contrary. Tang Wan was also unwilling to respond. This big cat, when he said that he would vent his anger, he would vent his anger. He just didn't understand why the other was unhappy. He was harder to raise than a little milk cat. When the Crown Prince boarded the aircraft, the middle-aged man that had been waiting on board unexpectedly asked. Why did you come out so fast? Carlos gave a bitter laugh, I was driven away by uncle. Eh. The middle-aged man laughed quietly and teasingly asked. The marshal is the only person in the entire empire who dares to not give you face. The Crown Prince sat down and took a drink from a water bottle, then sighed, it can't be helped. I had been pulled by the ears and lectured by him since I was young. I can only retaliate when he's too old to catch up to me. The middle-aged man was amused, those requirements truly aren't very high. Carlos pursed his lips, and there was still uncertainty in his heart, even if I wait until he's old I still might not be able to best him. He's only older than me by 10 years. When he's old, I'll also be old. TSK, it would be difficult to change my fortune in this lifetime. The middle-aged man laughed and shook his head. The joke was almost over, but he still curiously asked. Why did he drive you away? Carlos narrowed his eyes, aggrieved, I felt that his partner looks like a certain someone. I just looked at him a little more. Teacher, say, why does he have such a small heart? Mr. Bertram, who had always been by Carlos' side and taught him how to behave and deal with foreign affairs, was amused and smiled, just for this. Carlos restrained his laughter, yes. However, I really do feel that this little uncle looks familiar. Interested, Bertram listened to what he was saying. Carlos's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and he solemnly said. He looks a little like the Crown Princess, especially when he was younger. Mr. Bertram laughed and said. With such words, don't tell me that the Crown Princess's looks changed after he grew up. How could there be a person who looked like the Crown Princess when he was younger? Carlos's expression became more serious, his eyes darkening. Compared to when he was young, the Crown Princess's temper changed. He was more lively when he was young. After he fell sick and stayed at home for half a year, he became more quiet and gentle. He was unfamiliar when speaking to me and didn't remember a lot of things that had happened. In addition, Carlos hesitated, when he grew up, he looked a bit different. Looked a bit different. His appearance hadn't changed too much, it was just the feeling. Right now. He's too reserved and too perfect. He doesn't quarrel or make any noise. He does things like a machine, perfectly carrying it out. I don't know how to interact with him. Once he was reminded of the Crown Princess Tangyu, Carlos had a headache. Bertram advised. But he has undoubtedly met the standards for becoming the future empress. The Crown Princess was also God's favorite. His spiritual strength had reached S level, such a thing can't be found in the entirety of the empire. At that time, it was because of his spiritual strength that he was appointed as Crown Princess among the numerous nobles. Carlos laughed, who knows? We'll speak after we see what the future brings. Bertram immediately perceived a different meaning from his words. What does "we'll speak after we see what the future brings" mean? Your way of thinking is very dangerous. Carlos shrugged, I'm saying that we'll be interacting more in the future. There's no other meaning. He subconsciously rubbed his nose. He had just smelled something familiar on Tang Wan's body. It was a scent that had disappeared from the crown princess's body. His memory was astonishing. Scent could also be clearly imprinted in his memory. So Tang Wan, just who are you? Tang Wan placed the crown prince's gift in their bedroom. It was a set of violet jade horse ornaments with exquisite workmanship. The largest could go on top of the table, and the smallest one was a pendant, so it could be worn around the neck. Tang Wan picked up the decorative ornament, somewhat spellbound. Zong he resentfully asked. You like his gift that much? That sour tone was very much like a territorial big cat's, who also wanted to toss out other people's things. The corner of Tang Wan's lips twitched. So this big cat still didn't know why he was drinking vinegar. He put down the pendant in his hands and smiled. It's all right. I was showing my manners. I must look like I liked it very much. Zong He's fur was smoothed over, and his lips curled. If you like it, then take it. Tang Wan did as he wished and pushed the box to the side to show that he wasn't paying any attention to it. The truth was that his heart was dripping with blood. This toy looked very expensive at a glance, but he didn't know how much it could be sold for. As expected, Zong He's expression cleared up a bit. Only then did Tang Wan say. I just felt that the little jade horse would really suit De Zhuang. It would look very good around his neck. De Zhuang hasn't come in a while. Is this child really that busy? Tang Wan really thought of him as a child he had raised, like his biological child. When Tang Wan thought of De Zhuang leaving as he desired and not returning, his heart squeezed uncomfortably. Zong he looked at Tang Wan's gaze with a calm expression, and sucked in a deep breath. I'll send someone to pick him up on a rest day. Tang Wan's eyes brightened and he asked, pleasantly surprised. Where's De Zhuang's house? I'll also go pick him up. You don't need to go, Zong he sincerely told him. He lives far from here, very far. Oh. Tang Wan could only drop the subject. Every time Zong he refuses to tell Tang Wan he's De Zhuang, I die a little on the inside. Chapter 47.2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. During the few days when he was waiting for De Zhuang, Tang Wan drew out 5 designs for cat toys. After he scanned them in, he passed them on to Bo Li Xiao and the other immediately sent him the money. He really was rich and imposing. After receiving the money, Tang Wan was in an excelled mood and looked up at the blue sky, speaking to Ji Yen. Xiao Ji, the weather today is good, windy and sunny. I'll count them off. It's suitable for marriage, to start building, to set off on a journey, to move houses, to pray for blessings. Ji Yen had a dumbstruck expression. So, just what do you want to do? Tang Wan tapped his finger, profoundly saying. So, it's just right to summon a new creature. The family needs a new child. Ji Yen silently tidied up the tools on the desk. As long as he was excited, it was fine. Tang Wan opened the system and took a deep breath. He solemnly opened the canine section and selected one Alaska, Husky, and Samoyed. He said that he'd raised dogs a long time ago, but he never had the free time. He didn't know what he was so busy with every day, but he wasn't idle. Tang Wan gravely told Ji Yen. Xiao Ji, make the preparations. The great devil kings are about to arrive. Ji Yen had a serious expression, like he was preparing for a battle. He didn't know how terrible the great devil kings that Tang Wan had talked about were. Following the wave of Tang Wan's hand, Ji Yen was flabbergasted. There were 3 plump furballs sitting in a row in front of him with confused expressions, looking back up at them. The one with the snow-white body unexpectedly had a smiling expression and was looking at him with an adorably tilted head. Ji Yen warily took a step back. The more cute and harmless something looked, the stronger and more ferocious its attacks would be. He didn't know if they would bite people. Under Ji Yan's cautious gaze, Tang Wan reached out and picked up the chubby one in the middle with 3 marks on its forehead. I didn't think that they'd be young children. That's fine, puppies grow up quickly. Tang Wan waved the husky around in front of Ji Yan, earnestly telling him. Don't be scared by this child's appearance. It's just an expert at tearing up the house. These three need to be taken out for a walk every day. In the future, I'll be troubling you. Ji Yan obediently nodded. These three didn't seem to be dangerous, so what was the Great Devil Kings about? Tang Wan petted the three dogs, from left to right. The Alaskan dog is called Manager Number 1, the Husky is called Manager Number 2, and the Samoyed is called Manager Number 3. From this day on, you three will be sheepdogs and can run with Shinju Gu. You four would definitely be able to play together. As soon as Tang Wan raised his hand, the three of them rolled over on the ground and ran wild in the field of grass. Then, Ji Yan understood what Tang Wan meant when he said that the Great Devil Kings were experts at tearing up the house. The three were still a little timid before, frequently paying attention to their surroundings. They changed after being more familiar, becoming even more unrestrained than Shinju Gu the alpaca, and scurried up and jumped down, grabbing at the birds and teasing the cats, and nibbling at whatever they saw. They were just good-looking. Their temperament was crazy enough to make people want to beat them up, as they were unable to be restrained. Manager Number 2 went to the fish pond to roll around. When Ji Yan raised his hand, a long piece of vine tied up the husky, trembled for a moment, then pulled it back. Manager Number 1 was digging holes, and when Ji Yan raised his hand, the garden burst with vines, tying and restraining everything. Chaos wasn't acceptable. Tang Wan shook his head. Xiao Ji was still inexperienced. At such times, just let the cats go. Was it not chaotic? Then they'd be chaotic together. Tang Wan simply released all of the cats, placing them all onto the lawn. He yelled at Ji Yan. Don't worry about it. Make me a cup of tea and get me some melon seeds. I'm not doing anything today, I want to watch this unfold. A large-scale cat-dog war could erupt any minute. A dozen cats surrounded the little milk dogs, which weren't much bigger than they were. It was immediately a one-sided battle. Mulan gracefully strode over. It was disgusted by the dirt on the ground and was afraid of being dirted. Mulan simply jumped up on Tang Wan's table, looking down and everything beneath it. It was like the arrival of a queen. All of the cats obediently dispersed, finding spots bathed in sunlight where they could lick themselves. Even the three dogs could feel the Mulan's murderous aura and were very cautious. The husky looked at Mulan with wide eyes. Its paw was still pressed on the head of a little short kitten. The short-legged kitten was also small. Being pressed into the ground, it meowed delicately. Murder flashed through Mulan's eyes. It immediately jumped down from the table and pushed the husky down to the ground with a paw, then followed up with a chain of 18 strikes, beating up the husky until it had a stupefied expression. After its attack, Mulan bared its teeth, scaring the three dogs so much that they recoiled. They were all as obedient as a quail. There was no more pulling up fish, digging holes, rolling around in the mud, gnawing on trees, biting flowers, or scratching tables. Mulan returned to Tang Wan's side, cool and elegant. Queen Mulan had one doctrine. Whoever was unrestrained would get beat up. It didn't matter if the other was bigger, or what species they were, as long as they were disturbing it and Daddy Tang's rest, it would go beat them up. Tang Wan took the cup of tea Ji Yan offered and muffled his laughter. Little maiden, I still want to see a big cat. Dog war. When you make such a fuss, no one else dares to be noisy. How are you so fierce? Ji Yan looked at the little cat with an admiring gaze. When it came to supervising animals, he was unexpectedly inferior to a pet. Tang Wan had also bought a lot of toys. Balls that dogs like to play with, hemp ropes, and other things were all tossed onto the lawn so that they could all play together. As long as they didn't bite, fighting wasn't a problem. Tang Wan picked up Mulan and sat down under the sun, growing sleepy. After drifting off for 10 minutes, Tang Wan was woken up by a dog's bark. Because Manager 2 and 3 were fighting over the same toy, they were fighting in a frenzy of barks. Mulan stood up again, wanting to go over and beat them up. Tang Wan yawned, taking a video of Mulan teaching the two dogs a lesson and uploading it to Weibo. Eating, sleeping, and scolding De Zhuang. Queen Mulan smacks again, disciplining two disobedient little brothers and using its strength to convey the truth. In the world of Kung Fu, speed defines power. The comments came very quickly, the fans wanting to know what kind of Meng pets the three new ones were. Their guesses weren't very accurate. These three look like canines. Is the one that was beaten up and doesn't dare raise a paw anymore a wolf? It sounds a lot like one. Why do I feel that it only dares to bark and doesn't dare to raise a paw? Tang Wan was just making a joke. In the legends, huskies never won in a physical fight, but had never lost in an argument. Its cries were as powerful as an earthquake. Extended claws. They didn't exist. At this time, there was a person who asked. What kind of species is the one that's the biggest and the chubbiest? A hybrid between a dog and a pig. Tang Wan subconsciously glanced at Manager number 1. This Alaskan dog really was chubby, so chubby that it looked like a little piglet. Number 1, there's someone saying that you look like a little piglet. What do you think? Number 1 licked Tang Wan's fingers, not understanding at all. Tang Wan rubbed its head, sincerely saying. Child, it's really good to not understand what people are saying. Another fan asked. This white one is really beautiful, is it a mythical fox? Fox. When it was mentioned, Tang Wan had a bright idea. He opened his system and bought an Arctic fox. He placed the Arctic fox and Samia together and took a picture from behind, putting it online. He asked everyone. Guess which one the fox is, and which one the Samiyet is. The fans all flipped a table. If we knew, we would have long since become paleontologists. Would we have time to spend on the internet with you? Tang Wan solemnly gave that comment a like and very kindly told everyone. Then do you guys want to know the answer? The fans thought that he wanted to start a live broadcast, so they all shouted. Want. Please announce the answer. Tang Wan beamed and replied. I also can't distinguish the two just by looking at the butt. You guys are really honest. The fans were teased until their fur puffed up. We're angry. The kind that can't be coaxed. Tang Wan uploaded the photo he had taken of the cool and elegant Mulan, and the fans immediately caused a scene. They all licked the screen for Mulan's flourishing beauty and shouted, Long live the Queen. After being so angered by Tang Wan that their fur puffed up, they were fully coaxed in the next minute. Tang Wan laughed, no longer sleepy. These cute people of the future were like kittens. Once teased, their fur would puff up, and it would be fine once they were coaxed. They were especially energetic. At this time, Tang Wan's communications device rang. He temporarily pulled away from Weibo and glanced at the message on his communications device. Bo Li Qiao sent. I sent you 2 tickets to the Beta Ursi Minori's theme park. You can bring De Zhuang to the theme park to play with the tickets. You don't need to wait in line. Tang Wan was excited after reading his message, and he asked Ji Yen. Is the Beta Ursi Minori's theme park fun? Acting as a little encyclopedia, Ji Yen was quickly ready with an answer. The Beta Ursi Minori's theme park is one of the largest theme parks in the empire. Recently, a cat climbing tree that's over 100 meters tall has been added. It would be difficult to climb even for adults. Supposedly, a lot of people take up the challenge every day. There is also the children's entertainment castle. In order for the children to have fun, there is a limit of 100,000 people per day and the tickets are also very expensive. After all, those who lived in Beta Ursi Minori's didn't lack money. Tang Wan thanked Bo Li Qiao. He decided to wait for De Zhuang to arrive so he could take him out to play. De Zhuang definitely hadn't had the time to play before. Now that he had grown and could speak, there wouldn't be any communications problems. When Tang Wan thought of taking De Zhuang to the theme park to play, he was so excited that he couldn't sleep. He started making an itinerary, and he didn't want to lose him when he'd run around on the road. Should he buy a leash for De Zhuang? Tang Wan went online to the children's shopping center. After asking customer service, he swiped a large shopping cart to get the essential good for children. Water bottle. Medicine. A cap. A little umbrella. And a magical item. A super diaper. A super diaper was almost the same as a disposable diaper. The technology for it was better than a disposable diaper. Upon wearing it, it could perfectly solve the problem of a child using the toilet at any time. Tang Wan felt that, at De Zhuang's age, he was unlikely to defecate, so they only needed to dispose of the pee. He would need to be prepared since he didn't know if there would be a line for the bathrooms. Early on the next day, when he received the goods, the entire household was shocked. Lin Bo happily went to Tang Wan again. "Are you two getting ready to have a baby?" Tang Wan stared back blankly. "What?" Lin Bo placed the goods in front of Tang Wan. If he didn't want children, then what were all these goods for? Zhong He unhappily glanced at it and gravely told Tang Wan. "I don't want children." Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You all really think too much. I prepared all of these for De Zhuang." Zhong He. "That you're dead in my heart." "What, you're dead in my heart? I already said that I didn't want children." Tang Wan was also unhappy with Zhong He's attitude. How would making a child with his genes provoke such resentment? Even if he didn't want children right now, Zhong He also shouldn't have this attitude. Zhong He opened his mouth, left speechless by Tang Wan's tough attitude. He also couldn't give an explanation. His stifled expression became more and more unsightly. Lin Bo sighed. He helped Tang Wan tidy up the items, saying, "The marshal was just worried that you don't like him if you have children. From childhood till now, he's always been awkward. You don't have to bother with him." Zhong He grit his teeth, wanting to say that it wasn't true. However, if he said it, Tang Wan would be even angrier. Unless he told him right now that he was De Zhuang. Tang Wan resentfully gazed at Zhong He for a while and found that he didn't contradict him. He angrily said to him, "Are you stupid? Even drinking his own child's vinegar, how could an adult be so immature?" Zhong He's expression was calm and steady. He really couldn't pretend anymore. He said with a cold voice, I have something that I want to tell you." Degree.